Cinema Savvy podcast. It is I, Tate.
Are we still a podcast, by the way? we were never a podcast to begin with.
That is very true. It is me, Tate. I'm joined with Chris and George, the usual lot. We are also joined with special guest Naomi today, and we're also joined with Ryan, who is going to be our lovely judge for another battle of the brackets. This time round, it is the worst movie sequel. I'm not sure why this has been put up for this week. Maybe because of Mamma Mia. I have no idea.
Well,
who knows?
It was originally for Jurassic World 2. It just got delayed.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, we're doing this the same day as the Dark Knight's 10th anniversary, which they have nothing in common.
I was going to say, if you're looking at this month, like, apart from Mamma Mia, like, I didn't even think of that, Dark Knight 10-year anniversary, and next week we've got Mission Impossible 6, which actually looks really good.
Yeah.
Two great movie sequels. Unfortunately, we're flipping it on its head. Worst movie sequel. In all honesty, I don't know why it took so long to do this bracket. It seems like a really logical topic to argue about with movies, but I'm glad we finally got to it now. So it should be a good one.
Should I go through the bracket then?
Yes. So if you look at the screen, you will see that I have literally 20 minutes ago finished a Photoshop, which is why it's so late on the channel. We have and I'm gonna attempt this. Tate with Son of a Mask versus Chris with The Matrix Revolution, me with Terminator Genisys, and Naomi with Attack of the Clones. We have... I'm sorry, I've forgotten. Hold on.
That's Batman and Robin, it looks like.
It's me again with Batman
and Robin. It's Naomi with Batman and Robin versus... is it me? Yes, it's me and we have Chris and X-Men Apocalypse versus Tate and Big Mama's House 2. We have George and Quantum of Solace versus Tate and God's Not Dead 2. Look, we have Blues Brothers 2000 with Naomi versus Chris, and for some ludicrous reason, The Dark Knight Rises. We've got Chris and Indiana Jones. I keep saying Indiana Jones 5, but I always forget the fourth one.
Not yet.
In all honesty, the fifth one will probably be right at home on a bracket like this anyway.
Will be Indy 4. This is like Indy 4 against me and Cars 2. And then we have Tate and Garfield 2 versus, for some reason, Die Another Day with Naomi.
Die Another Day is terrible.
It really broke my heart.
Now
so sad to see Pierce Brosnan in this bracket.
Could have put him on Mamma Mia too, just foresight, because it's going to be awesome. I mean, you pretty much outlined it there, because we've got the verses going on. But for anyone that doesn't know, it's a very, very simple premise. We are literally just going to be arguing it out for worst movie sequel. So each of us have 1 minute of a main argument to argue for our movie of choice, then followed by a 30-second rebuttal each. It's then up to everyone else on the panel that hasn't argued in that fight to decide who goes through to the next round. If it's a tiebreaker, we defer over to another person, the judge, and then we put the one through to the next round of the brackets. I think we've got all the rules and everything out of the way, all the pomp and circumstance. So shall we get to the main fight then?
Yes. Well, for those that know, you get a minute to argue, followed by a minute from number 2. Then you each get a 30-second rebuttal, and then the vote is put to us. And I'm on time with the timer for once. So it is first Tate and Son of a Mask against Chris and The Matrix Revolutions.
Yes.
Tate, begin in 3, 2, 1, go.
I want to take you back to a time where Jim Carrey was making some really, really good films with the style of acting that he's become so famous with, his wacky outbursts and everything that made him so silly and so lovable. I want to introduce you as well to Cameron Diaz, as this was her first film to the world with the first Mask film. I then want to take you to the darkest depths of hell in the shape of Son of the Mask, a film where they take all of the humor, all of the comedy out from the first film and dump it into a steaming pile of shit. You have, for some strange reason, the baby and a dog as the main character in a film which is a sequel to a Jim Carrey comedy. It completely baffles me, the writing decisions that was made here. And it is a different writer to the first film, by the way, different director. In fact, almost completely different, except for the title of the film, which shares similar notice there. It's a complete scratch across the entire...
Chris, 3, 2, 1, go.
In 1999, the Wachowskis gave us a movie of the first Matrix movie, which was without a doubt one of the most groundbreaking movies from that year, one of the most groundbreaking action movies of all time in terms of how it revolutionized action, CGI, special effects, how things were choreographed, everything like that, and launched a whole new line of ankle-length leather coats, I'm absolutely sure. to the point where, because of the success of that movie, they decided that, you know what, people want sequels to this movie. Guess what? We didn't. After the first Matrix film, we had Matrix Reloaded, which, although is a bad movie, still balanced it out with action, which is everything that everyone loved for the first movie. We then hit Matrix Revolutions, and it feels like you're in a philosophy lecture. Now, don't get me wrong, subject matter like that in a movie is absolutely fine. It's good to have some of that stuff. However, the writing ability from the Wachowskis in this movie is absolutely dreadful. It's filled with a very, very large cast of flat, uninteresting characters. And the way it wraps up the story is just very underwhelming for the main characters that we've followed before that point.
Underwhelming. You're saying your film was underwhelming. My film was completely insulting. I can find good parts of the Matrix Revolutions. I like the giant mech battle. It feels like you're watching a Gears of War film. It's brilliant. I think that some of the philosophy gets a little bit juggled up, but my film literally trades in Jim Carrey's wacky acting for kids and dog poop jokes, which kids would actually find horrific. It's awful. Find one good thing about Son of a Mask, and I'll give you this round.
Chris, go.
The thing is, with your movie, it was dead on arrival. Like, even fans of the first Mask film probably didn't go and see this one anyway. And wasn't it, I need to get this corrected, wasn't it direct-to-video? Felt direct-to-video. No one saw your movie. It was awful, dead on arrival. The thing is with Matrix Revolutions is it was tying up a trilogy. It had the chance to go out on an absolute bang. The giant mech battle goes on for an hour. It completely overstays its welcome. And then beyond that, you're just filled with, like, absolutely just vapid philosophy all the way through the movie. That was integrated well into the first movie and balance that with action.
There's round one. Ding, ding, ding. I'm trying to read if this came out at a cinema.
It probably did. I was probably
pretty sure it did.
on that.
Chris, all you had to do is say one nice thing about my movie.
Why would I do such a thing? Also, what's wrong with a movie like...
I handed you the round on a plate by saying say a nice thing about it.
Some of my favourite skits and Animaniacs involve like a baby and a dog. Like,
you need to see this film.
So, Son of the Mask did come out at the cinema.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, you may remove that from my argument. I wasn't sure.
Is anybody... has anyone come to a decision on who they want to vote for?
I think I have, if I'm right to go first.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just going to give this one to Chris. I think he argued in a much more concise manner, apart from the lie that he said was a fact, which I'm willing to overlook.
It'll hang over a shadow for like the rest of my life.
I think Tate made some good points, but I think your first argument, I think you just took a little bit too long to actually get into like the bulk of it. So I don't think you quite made enough points as to why your film sucked until your rebuttal, which was I thought was way stronger. But overall, I think Chris had a better, more concise argument and rebuttal. So for that reason, I'm going to give this one to Chris.
Okay, Naomi?
I think I'm going to give this one to Chris as well, because he did, again, he was more concise. He went straight into it, whilst Tate did take a little bit long to get into it. Plus, Chris saying that Son of the Mask was dead on arrival. Yeah, it pretty much was. I mean, the fact that, like, Jim Carrey was going to be in it, then wasn't, and all the mess that was happening, whilst Matrix did have that kind of high expectation for it, so... Yeah.
And with that, Son of a Mask is out. Just for argument's sake, I would have also gone with Chris. I thought by Tate saying, his wasn't related to the original in terms of directing stuff, Chris mentioned the Wachowskis did this, and it was into the trilogy and whatnot. I thought Chris had a stronger argument. No one actually really argued why the film was so bad.
Poop jokes, dude. Poop and baby jokes. The baby and the dog being a main character.
There's no examples.
Saying Son of the Mask isn't the worst film, that's just weird to me.
I think
I would say that out of like all my picks, Matrix Revolutions was the one that I just had to pick on the fly because I couldn't think of another bad sequel I wanted. So the fact that I've got to like think of another argument for that later on down the line.
Here, I really like the Matrix Revolutions, and I would happily have anyone discuss that with me at any other time other than this.
Well, it's nice to see the entire collective fan base for that movie, isn't it?
Moving on to the next round.
I will say before we get on to the next round, sorry, people get comments in your worst movie sequels and everything like that. We just had Itzmo in the comments saying Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and Jaws 3D are the worst sequels in my opinion. Let's be honest, there are absolutely hundreds and thousands of like awful movie sequels out there, direct to video or theatrical. So do get comments in throughout the brackets of your own picks as well. But yeah, we'll move on now.
Any film with Jaws in is a disgrace.
Apart from the one with Michael Caine.
My name is Michael Caine.
What did he say? He did it because it paid for his house or something.
Yes,
yeah, something like that. With fair play, you know, like you got to do. Man's got to do what he's got to do.
Right. Next up, we have Terminator Genisys versus Attack of the Clones.
Both sci-fi sequels.
Okay, are you ready? Who's going first?
Terminator and me.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
I can't even begin to describe the monstrosity that's Terminator Genisys. People waited like what? I mean, every time they tried to do another Terminator, it failed. This was the one. You know, we've got Emilia Clarke fresh off Game of Thrones. We're bringing back Arnie for the first Terminator film in like 15 years. We're doing this Terminator 1. You had the creator come out and say, this is the official Terminator 3. That is exactly what James Cameron said on a video. He endorsed it. And this was like the worst film I've ever sat through the cinema in my entire life. There's been 22 years of going to the cinema, and this was the worst experience ever. The performances are all dreadful. Jai Courtney is the worst performance I've ever seen in my lifetime. It was awful. He was like a wooden plank. You can find that in our review. He is literally just wood walking around. It is just disgusting and wrong. The CGI is dreadful. There's a Terminator driving a car in the future with other Terminators, like the robots of the future need to drive cars together. It's a disgrace. And what it does, it rewrites the entire Terminator timeline to do a new reboot, which was so bad they've rebooted the reboots. That's how awful this film is.
And go.
I hate sand. It's coarse and rough, and it gets everywhere. Everyone quotes that dialogue as one of the worst bits of dialogue to ever come out of cinema. And that's the reason why Attack of the Clones is the worst movie sequel. There was so much build up to it. I mean, there were critics saying that it was really good. Dead on arrival. There are people that really do hate this movie because it has nothing to do with what Star Wars is to fans. The whole clones thing, it's just really out of nowhere. The whole type of politically government thing. Just nothing there. Anakin, Hayden Christensen, I think he was given really terrible direction with his character. There's nothing there with him and Natalie Portman. This is a truly dire experience to have to sit through. And I don't know how George Lucas thought this was a good idea. I think he was still surrounded by yes men for this idea and saying that he planned it all out like this. Sure. I believe you when I see pigs fly, mate. I believe you.
And stop. And rebuttal, go.
Attack of the Clones became a meme. It is an awful film. It's one of the worst Star Wars films. However, it's beautiful. There are memories to be made from it. It has one of the finest space battles in Obi-Wan versus Jango Fett. Hey, we get Jango Fett, who's more badass than Boba Fett. Guess what? All the clones ever, they're bloody bounty hunters. It was quality. Seeing all the Jedi, hundreds of them fighting together, was an amazing sight to see. Yeah, Christopher Lee is Count Dooku. And Anakin doesn't like sand. It's memorable. If it's not awful, some films are so bad they're absolutely amazing. Can anyone name one single line from Terminator?
And go.
You mentioned that this was the worst Star Wars sequel. It's one of the worst Star Wars films anyway. I would bet that Terminator Salvation is the worst one out of the Terminator ones. I'm surprised you didn't go for that. I mean, seriously, you had Christian Bale just shouting around all the time, not really connecting to people like Sarah Connor throughout that. I'm wondering why we didn't have that. Star Wars Attack of the Clones is truly dire to have to sit through, and it's just not good at all because you got too much CGI there. There's nothing there.
Oh, we're done.
I forgot how bad Terminator Genisys is.
I know, right?
Just thinking about it.
When you brought it up for the bracket, I was like, oh yeah, I went to see that movie. I remember that. I'll go first on this one. I thought both of you had a very, very strong opening argument, and I really do want to give this to Attack of the Clones because, like what you said, like, you know, the dialogue and everything like that, and direction and the lack of direction, for want of a better word. But I think George just had a lot more venom in his argument in the opening minute. I was basically sold on that opening minute with George. Said that they've had to reboot the reboot and everything like that. The fact that the creator said it was like the official Terminator 3, and now he's backpedaled that. And also, I thought it was an interesting spin how, you know, the rebuttal saying that your movie kind of, Attack of the Clones, does have a legacy now, although it might not be a great legacy, whereas Genisys, everyone's already forgotten about it. So I'm going to give it to George on this one, but it was a very good fight.
I tried.
Do or do not, etc., etc.
Tate, do you want to go or shall I?
You can go. I'm still thinking.
All right.
Tate looks in pain. Like, are you still feeling the effects of Son of the Mask, Tate?
Seriously, Chris, drunk watch along with Son of the Mask. I dare you.
I'm down. I'm so down.
I think I'm going to have to give this one to George too. There was two really good points that resonated with me. One, he said, Chris just mentioned it about rebooting the reboot, and then that really struck home of like how truly terrible it was. And the other good point was there are familiar scenes within Attack of the Clones, scenes that everybody can reference and sort of enjoy on some level, whether you enjoy it because it's good or it's so bad you like it. And then when you think about Terminator Genisys, there's no memorable scenes, whereas like you said, the Attack of the Clones, rather, there's so many memorable scenes. Like the sand quote is such a meme. All the awful rom-com scenes with Anakin and Padme on Naboo, whereas at least you take something away from Attack of the Clones, you don't take anything away from Genisys, in my opinion. So that's why I think George won that one.
Yeah.
What about the memorable scene where Arnie like dives out of the helicopter and like crashes through another helicopter? Do you
remember the CGI bus?
Not even a little bit.
So for me, I know it doesn't matter because Terminator's going through, but I haven't seen Terminator Genisys. I haven't. And the argument was kind of swaying in the direction of Attack of the Clones until George reminded me that I do still love the memes. Like, the memes are still there from Attack of the Clones. So, yeah, I probably would have gone with George as well.
I'll also say as well that Terminator Genisys makes Terminator Salvation look like fucking Citizen Kane. Like, seriously.
I never thought I would hear Terminator Salvation and Citizen Kane in the same sentence.
Oh, let's get a Citizen Kane reboot going with Christian Bale.
I don't think I could want anything less.
Can you imagine Christian Bale doing that room trashing scene though from Citizen Kane? Like, because I sure as hell can. But
okay. So moving on to the next battle. It is.
I can't wait for this one.
Batman and Robin versus Amazing Spider-Man 2. Who's going first?
I'm going to take my... Go on,
Has Naomi got Batman and Robin? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got a rematch. Oh.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my personal bias out of this fight because I've gone on record saying that Batman and Robin is one of my favourite Batman films. More so than The Dark Knight Rises. More to come later.
Okay. Are you ready, Naomi?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
Bat nipples, bat butts. Just why does Arnold have to keep saying ice puns? Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze teaming up, their plans wouldn't work. And also, this has the distinction of the fact that Joel Schumacher actually has apologized to people. George Clooney as Batman has apologized to people for this movie. I don't understand why Amazing Spider-Man 2 is up here because I consider that to be still a good Spider-Man film. I mean, they capture the emotion of when Gwen Stacy dies. I think that Jamie Foxx is a good villain. I think Andrew Garfield is a great Spider-Man there. The actual connection between Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker was as done between like Poison Ivy and anyone or George Clooney with anyone. Everyone's just so lifeless in Batman and Robin. There's just absolutely no one. There's just
stop and go.
I grew up with Batman and Robin. It was my favorite Batman films way beyond. Before the Batman Begins, I liked it more than the Jack Nicholson Joker film. I loved it because kids loved it. It's a fantastic kids film. You grew up with fun. Arnie Ice Puns. You give me memories. I want to watch it again. Whereas you get Amazing Spider-Man 2. The Spider-Man film, it's tried to launch the Spider-Man cinematic universe. And if that doesn't sound as bad as it is, then the post-credit scene is basically Oscorp is the Sinister Six, because we really want to get a Sinister Six film out. And it's just absolute nonsense. Even as a sequel goes, no one wanted Amazing Spider-Man 1, and that was dark and gritty, trying to be the Dark Knight. This, because the Avengers became a hit, this tried to copy the Avengers and be bright color palettes everywhere. This actually being a sequel itself completely changed it from the first one because they wanted to forget the first film and instead they create their own issues. Jamie Foxx is basically the B-Tech Jim Carrey from Batman Forever. He's literally the exact same character, but even worse. Because at least in Batman Forever, you've got Val Kilmer, you've got Two-Face, you've got...
And stop, and rebuttal, go.
It says volumes when the Batman from the previous one doesn't want to be in this. It says that when Tim Burton, who has produced the last one, doesn't want to be in this. Like, I'm pretty sure that no one wants to be in this. And like I said, Joel Schumacher has apologized and offered refunds to anyone who went to see this film in the cinema. I haven't seen that with Amazing Spider-Man. I still see people praise it, especially with like the action and the slow motion in Times Square, with that going through the electric and Spider-Man scene.
And stop. And go.
The only praise the Amazing Spider-Man 2 has, it was so bad they rebooted the reboot with Tom Holland. They were so desperate to get him into the Avengers, they had to reboot it again. This is 7 years after Spider-Man 3. This is the second Spider-Man film, and they've already begun a new reboot because it was that awful. They tried to set 10 films about focusing on their own. The Gwen Stacy death was great. However, it was in every single trailer. Every single trailer just kept hinting. The Green Goblin, comparing that Green Goblin to the real Willem Dafoe, that's like comparing an ant to an absolute giant. It is disgusting. It's dreadful.
Can we get a shirt going with Reboot the Reboot?
I thought that as soon as I saw the arguments, I was like, oh, fuck's sake. It's the exact same argument. It's memes versus reboots.
Okay. I'm going to go first on this one. I just want to say that I both equally hate these two films. They're awful superhero films.
You're insane,
Batman and Robin's terrible. I don't care what you say.
Great. It's great.
As far as the arguments were concerned, I just feel like Naomi's attack was way stronger. I think she had a lot more points to attack on, and she was basically able to punch right through the direct area of where Batman and Robin falls down. So I would give this to Naomi.
Ryan, I'm going to let you go next.
Oh, I was hoping you'd go next. Okay.
Well, I can go next if you like. It's up to you.
No,
it depends if you want the decider.
No, the decider. Okay, you can go.
Okay. I'm really sorry, Naomi, but I'm going to give this to George again. I think he just covered way more points in his main argument and his rebuttal as well. Reboot the Reboot is tending to sway me a lot, but the fact that he says like they built like an entire cinematic universe, and the fact that Batman and Robin is a great kids movie. The movie was made to sell toys. It was marketed specifically for kids, and I think even Joel Schumacher on set, before he said like action, he said like, remember guys, we're making a cartoon. So if you're going into it for that, I think it hits that. So personal bias aside, I am going to give it to Amazing Spider-Man 2. Also, the fact,
personal bias isn't still getting in the way.
The fact that you said that Batman and Robin is lifeless, if anything, it's completely the opposite to that. There's so much enthusiasm and like, you know.
If you were at the Arnie event, wouldn't you not have got him to sign a picture of Mr. Freeze?
Oh man, can you imagine? That would say balls though. If you like could only get one signature from Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're the guy there with a Batman and Robin poster. Like fair play, you have earned my respect.
Okay, is it
I'll give it to George. Then?
Yeah. I mean, I think I have to give it to George too, just because of the point. Again, it's like rebooting the reboot. I know it's basically the same argument, but it still strikes true. Like you know that something has failed so badly when a studio rushes to put the next film into production. So yeah, I think George has just won this one over for me. But it was really close. Like there's some really good points, and they're both, in my opinion, they're both really, really dire films. But at least when you come out of Batman and Robin, you're sort of like, well, at least there was like some laughs in there. Whereas Amazing Spider-Man is just like,
quick,
I don't know.
very, very quick question. Seeing as this round is over, aren't they going to reboot Batman for the third time in 10 years as well now?
DC is just a joke right now.
Pretty much.
There's only one way of putting that way. Without Nolan, there's, to be fair, without Dark Knight coming out 2 years ago, without Nolan, there's probably no DCEU.
Yeah, that's true.
That
is true.
Moving on, we have Chris and X-Men Apocalypse. Let's two. Oh, this is gonna right. I have a stopwatch. Chris, you are fighting first. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
talk about killing a franchise dead. Let's take Logan out of the equation here. This is the main X-Men series that we're following here. Before this, you kind of had a semi-reboot with a soft reboot, more or less, with First Class. You then went on to Days of Future Past, which is without a doubt one of the greatest comic book movies. I think that's on a load of comic book movie lists as well. Everyone's anticipating Apocalypse. Apocalypse, it's a brand new villain in the X-Men franchise. Usually they always tend to go with Magneto, and Apocalypse is one of the most prolific villains in the X-Men franchise in the comic books. And you get amazing talent to play that character with Oscar Isaac. Oh boy, what an absolute waste of potential that they killed the franchise dead with this movie, to the point where no one's looking forward to Dark Phoenix, and the fact that with now the Fox merger, it's going to be completely rebooted in the first place. They kind of fall into all exactly the same pitfalls as X-Men The Last Stand. Also another really bad movie sequel, but the fact of the matter is, what kind of hurts this one more and why I think this one's worse is that it does kind of just ruin all of that previous potential and build up from the previous two movies.
Tate, go.
I just want to say that you started your argument by saying it killed the franchise dead, and yet they're still going to make another film no matter what you say. It made money. It may have been disliked by a lot of fans, but there is still some elements of the film which I quite like. The Magneto scene with him and his family in the forest, one of the best moments in the X-Men franchise. I am ashamed to own a copy of this. I'm ashamed to own a copy of Big Mama's House 2. I'm ashamed to look at Martin Lawrence's dopey face on the cover of that film. It took the first film, which given mediocre reviews, and did exactly the same as what it did. It's a complete carbon copy. You could watch the first film and the second film. It's exactly the same. What could make a terrible sequel even worse is the fact that they've conned people into going to see this film because it's exactly the same as what's previously there. All you get is black jokes and fat jokes. It's dire. It's actually dire. I can't believe that we actually own a copy of this film in the house. It may be good for some kids, but it's...
Stop. Right. Chris, go.
Tate, you said you didn't mind the first Big Mama's House movie, and then you just said that the second one's more or less exactly the same one. Why do you hate it? Also, you own a copy of that movie. I don't own a copy of X-Men Apocalypse because it's that bad, and it would physically hurt me to own a copy of that movie. You talked about the Magneto scene as well. It makes no sense in terms of the continuity and the time frame from the previous movie, and also is wildly out of character for the character of Magneto himself, how he ends his story arc at the end of Days of Future Past. This falls into all the same pitfalls that Fox has always done with the X-Men franchise, and Dark Phoenix has been... okay.
Go.
But some of the scenes are exciting. I can find excitement in X-Men Apocalypse at some points. Big Mama's House 1, I said, got given good reviews. I didn't say I liked it, and I didn't say I liked this film either. I said that we have it in our house, and I'm ashamed to own it. X-Men Apocalypse does have some exciting scenes. Big Mama's House 2 has a scene where he goes to a spa and has hot rocks put on his back because that's funny because he's in a fat suit. That's the level of humor we're dealing with here. That is the complete level of humor we're dealing with here.
I'm smiling.
Is anyone ready? I really want to watch Big Mama's House 2 now.
Yeah, I do as well. Tate probably just did a better job than any of the trailers or marketing for the actual movie.
Yeah.
I'll go first if no one's ready.
Brinsley in the comments as well, mate. You're selling me on Big Mama's House too. It's not just us, Tate.
I think Tate's won this one for me. Just when he just pulled up the copy of it, why is he in the pants? It just really brought it home for me. I think he argued it really well. And when in your rebuttal, I think when you talked about when you deconstructed the spa scene to say why is it funny, and it's just not funny. I'm only laughing because of how stupid it is. It's not good. It's not good comedy. I think, Chris, to be fair, you made some excellent points about the continuity of the franchise and where it went and things like that. But I think Tate won me over when he said they've just made the same film again, but as a sequel. So I think just for me, he just edges it, but it was really close. Fine. You both had really good points.
I too am going with Tayson. I thought Chris did an okay argument with X-Men Apocalypse. However, when Tate did bring up that scene with the family, it is the only memorable scene from that film. Even if he does make me want to watch a Big Mama's House film now.
Guys, you can borrow the copy if you really want. In fact, take it. Please take it.
It's probably on Netflix.
I think if you took it to CEX, they wouldn't even take it off you. Take some valuable shelf space.
Do you want to know what the tagline of the film is? The mama of all comedies is back.
So wait, they took the tagline of the first movie and just added a couple of words to the
Yeah, like I said, it's a copy.
Oh dear.
Right, we have our next fight. We might need to pick up the pace
Hang
as
on.
well.
Oh, hang on here.
Oh, hang on.
Naomi's.
Sorry, I've just had a
Did you
message.
forget?
Naomi needs to take off in approximately 20-ish minutes.
I'm graduating tomorrow, so.
So I'm wondering if we can get through. We Tate passed that one, right? Tate's through.
Yeah, Tate's
on Big
through.
Mama's house too. I'm just wondering if we can get through the first round quickly, and then if we can possibly maybe defer the picks over to someone else. If we can do that, I don't know if that'll work out, but yeah.
Work. Okay.
Yeah, I do apologize for this, but I did want to come on and hang out with you guys.
That's okay.
So the next battle is Quantum of Solace versus God's Not Dead 2.
I have Quantum of Solace. Tate has God's Not Dead 2.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone wants to tell me when, and we can do battle.
I will bring up the timer now. Give me a second. Stall for time.
So,
and 1 minute on the clock. Who's going first? George, you're up first with Quantum of Solace. Time starts now.
Let's take you back to 2006 when Casino Royale came out and was one of the best Bond films of all time in Daniel Craig's first outing. That means incredible hype put towards the following film, Quantum of Solace, released in 2008. And they rushed this film because they wanted a sequel to Casino Royale because it was so good. And what happened during filming? The massive writer's strike. Instead of delaying the film like a sensible human being, they decided, let's just carry on writing this film during filming, which was absolutely awful. You can even start with the opening chase. This is the most sequel of Bond sequels. This is the first one to follow on from the previous film directly. It begins with, that's one finishes with the car chase. It's really hard not to have a seizure when there's just a cut every millisecond of another Alfa Romeo trying to make it look quicker. The action is dreadful. The scene is dreadful. Daniel Craig looks already bored as he is in the following films. In this one, this is the one that absolutely sold it for him. He can't be asked to do anymore. They even rip off Goldfinger by having Oil Finger, where they just dip Gemma Arterton in black paint and say she's been oiled up. It's absolutely awful. There's nothing redeemed about it. It's an absolute disgrace to the name James Bond. There's not even a Bond car. They just destroy.
Time. Yeah, that's not really what you want when you want Gemma Arterton oiled up, is it? Really? Okay. 1 minute on the clock for God's Not Dead 2. Go.
God's Not Dead 2 might be one of the dumbest premises I've ever heard for a film ever. The premise, which I'll just kind of spell it out to you for people who haven't seen this film. Basically, they're in a religious studies class, and one of the teachers gets asked a question. One of the students answers with the answer, Jesus, and the teacher then talks about Jesus for a little bit because it's a religious studies class. Suddenly, there's a court case. The person's getting thrown out of school, and it becomes this massive witch hunt against Christianity for some strange reason. They've decided to make this film the most teeth-grinding, just rednecky kind of pile of I'm the victim that I could possibly ever imagine. With Quantum of Solace, it feels like a Bond film. It still has that Bond edge. I like the opera scene. The opera scene is brilliant. It really is. It really is. And it doesn't sit as badly as some of the others in the franchise.
Time, 30 seconds, go.
You haven't seen God's Not Dead 2. And also, God's Not Dead 3 actually made less money in his worst lights and came out last year. So I'm assuming that it's not even the worst God's Not Dead film. It shouldn't be on this list. Quantum of Solace actually made less money than Casino Royale. It's made less than all of the other Daniel Craig films by a country mile. It's awful. No one cares about God's Not Dead 2. It's been picked because it's probably on a Google list somewhere. It's rubbish. And Quantum of Solace is not a Bond film. It's not a Bond film. It's a shit Jason Bourne film. And the opera scene, Mission Impossible, shat on it in 2015. That's one of the best opera scenes in history. Makes Bond look worse.
Time. 30 seconds, go.
I have seen God's Not Dead 2, and I would like to state the fact that I actually really dislike Spectre and Skyfall way worse than I do of Quantum of Solace. Quantum of Solace still feels like an old school. Bond has that kind of suaveness and that humanness still in there. After that, it becomes a Jason Bourne ripoff film. With my film, it just becomes just an absolute swill of awful writing, awful lines, and awful messages that they're trying to breed out to their performance, to the people watching.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I am gonna give it to George, especially since he did say that the third one made less money. And like listening to Tate describe God's Not Dead 2, like I've seen my friend Rob of Cinematic Venom review the first one, and it just sounds like a complete rip-off of that one. And speaking as a religious person, that whole premise is just crazy. So yeah,
it's mental.
So you're giving the point to George on that one, yeah?
Yeah.
Chris,
do you want to go ahead of me this time?
Sure. I am also going to go for George. I think he had more of a well-rounded argument. I thought he brought a lot of points into his argument as well. Didn't just bring his Bond bias into it as well. Tate, I thought you could have attacked more with God's Not Dead 2 because it is a horrible film and is probably
really
objectively the worst movie on this entire bracket.
I honestly didn't even know they'd made God Not Dead 3. I'd heard that it was being made, but I didn't even know it was actually out yet.
Because as Naomi just mentioned, like the messages and how they go about those messages in that film is very hateful. It is incredibly biased, and that it's like, I'm fine with you making a religious movie, but the way they put messages across
the way they did it was
I think
so
if
bad.
you
Prince of Egypt, please.
Prince of Egypt is phenomenal.
I think Tate, had you attacked that side more and got that across, I think you may have edged it out with your argument on this one, but I think that George just had the broader scope of points in his argument, so I'll give it to George.
I'd like to remind everyone to fuck Quantum of Solace. It's a disgrace.
I have it right there.
I have it in a box here, which I can't do anything about because it's in my box.
It's in the other room. Anyway.
Right,
Ryan,
next up.
Sorry,
Ryan.
I think I would have gone for George as well anyway, but for the sake of brevity, let's move on because we've got to get.
Okay,
right.
So
Blues Brothers 2000, which is Naomi's pick, versus Chris, and some reason The Dark Knight Rises.
Naomi, are you ready?
Should we just put Naomi through now because like you're all going to vote against me on just like this anyway?
We want to hear your arguments anyway.
Oh,
3,
you'll get them.
2, 1, go.
You have an amazing first film with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd celebrating blues music. You get people like Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles and James Brown in it. How do you destroy it? Well, you say that everything you built up in the first one is gone. You basically get Aretha Franklin doing the same thing that she did, which is basically sing one of her hits for no reason. You get the band back together because apparently the band split up even though they got back together in the first one. And you make everyone do like... we're on the mission from God again. It's basically the same film again, except you have John Goodman instead of John Belushi because sadly John Belushi died by then. You basically have this weird kid character, and then you have everyone turn into zombies at the end. You have this weird voodoo lady that comes out of nowhere. You get loads of magic. Sure, the first one had we're on a mission from God, but this one is like the Lord works in mysterious ways, and you never get an actual ending. It just ends. At least with Dark Knight Rises, you get a beginning, a middle, and an end with an actual villain, an actual hero, an actual adversary, an actual character with everybody. Here with Blues Brothers, is obvious cash in.
Stop. And go.
Oh, we get an ending to The Dark Knight Rises, and I will get onto that ending in just a moment. I think a lot of people with this movie, and even before going into this bracket, they tend to look at the director's name attached to this thing and objectively say that Nolan can't make a bad movie. Guess what he did? And he made The Dark Knight Rises. What aggravates me the most about this movie is that it fundamentally breaks the laws that were set up for the character of Batman and the actual world that was set up from Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight trilogy was set up to be a more grounded, realistic take to the infinitesimal detail, to the utility belt that Batman wore, to the cape and how it was designed and everything. There are so many leaps of logic in The Dark Knight Rises. It's poorly written. It's poorly structured as a movie. All the scenes are just a combination of exposition scenes told out over a very, very exhaustive running time. Like, the actual scope of the story is too big for the film, and it's cut back, and the entire structure and time sequence of the movie is off. And
stop. Oh, God damn it. Rebuttal, go.
You want to talk about bad directors? John Landis did Blues Brothers 2000 as well, and he did the first one. Also by saying, like, oh, this had weird plot holes. Dark Knight had that as well. It had weird things out of nowhere. I mean, how did the Joker come up with all of this? Who is the Joker? We also don't know who is Bane, and that creates an interesting history with it, as well as with Talia al Ghul and Catwoman. They are interesting characters. You don't have any interesting characters in Blues Brothers. All you have is just the music, and whilst it is good music, not used.
Go.
With Blues Brothers 2000, you still have the music, you still have the comedy, and you still have that spirit of the first one.
There's no comedy. There's no of that.
Can I have my argument, please?
Yeah, you can start again on that one. Go.
Sorry.
Do I need to repeat what I just said?
Just go.
Okay. The thing is with The Dark Knight Rises, this is the final entry to the trilogy, and it completely betrays the character of Batman himself. The Batman that was set up from Batman Begins made a vow to his parents that he'd continue this crusade, and we opened the film that he's been absent for 8 years because he's hung up over a dead girlfriend. Like, really? Also, you sully the name of that girlfriend midway through the movie by just, like, having sex with Talia al Ghul, and then you completely venom that character at the end and just throw her in, like, when she didn't really need to be in the movie.
Stop.
Sorry, I just really hate Blues Brothers 2000.
I've never seen it. In all fairness, I haven't seen Blues Brothers 2000. I think I've seen a review on it.
You are very lucky.
Yeah, I haven't seen Blues Brothers 2000 as well. I don't think I ever want to.
Can I just say that 1 minute 30 is nowhere near enough time to rag on?
It's far too long for you. It's 1:29 too long. This is the boy that likes Mission Impossible 2.
I watched it again. I've been watching all the Mission Impossible films, and the lead up to is still
time limit.
Please, someone vote first.
I'll go first if that's okay. I'm actually going to give this one to. Oops, hang on, sorry, volume's low. I'm going to give this one to Chris. I think he argued it really well. I actually don't like The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, thank God, I'm not.
And I think the way he articulated the points really struck home with me about how much I disliked it, because I was involved with the hype of expecting a lot from this film for it to come out, and then it just fell flat on its face. You talked about the scenes being just exposition, and then it was like they didn't have time to actually go over all they wanted to, and then it felt like a rushed edit. And I thought that point was really good. What was I going to say? Yeah, so I think your argument was just a bit more concise, and I think you were like the way you explored why you didn't like the film was a much better way of going about it, I think. So yeah.
Thanks.
Tate, please.
George, you're next.
I can't do it.
If you both want to send Chris forward, that's fine.
I think I have to. I don't want to.
You can see the pain on your face.
I don't feel so good.
That's okay.
Oh my God.
This has been like a long-running
fight on the channel. It was a stronger argument. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. It's not your fault, Naomi.
We have broken
Chris's passion and hatred. I'm going to end him.
Time limit.
Right, Chris, you're through.
Okay.
I would have voted for Naomi.
I can't be biased.
Traitor!
If you'd have, to be fair, I probably would have been biased. It was just the argument was too strong for Chris. It was too strong.
Right,
we are years to get that off his chest.
Okay, next.
Oh, I've got more. I've got more for the next round. I think we should, so that we can get everyone's argument on the board at least once, I think we should skip the Indiana Jones 4 Cars 1 and move that to last, and move up Garfield 2 versus Die Another Day now, so we get all of Naomi's arguments.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Cool.
I am first.
I'm sorry, I went to a uni that was so far up north.
It's fine. It's fine. Seriously,
we've all done it. Honestly, don't worry.
So Tate is with Garfield 2.
Yep.
Timer starts now.
I can't believe this. I'm actually looking at IMDb. I didn't know this beforehand. It's actually written by Joel Cohen.
It's not that Joel Cohen.
Okay, thank God for that. This is one of the worst comedies I've ever seen in my entire life. I'd say the first Garfield film was pretty bad. This one took it to a whole new level. And as far as sequels are concerned, it feels just twice as bad as the first one because there are two Garfields. I found the Garfield character annoying in the first one. I love Garfield comics. I love the cartoon. But Bill Murray's just Garfield is, he's just infuriating as a character. You can't get behind him. You can't actually like him as a main character. In this film, it's him doing an English accent or an imitation English accent, which makes it feel way worse. As far as Die Another Day is concerned, I actually don't mind it. It's not a bad Pierce Brosnan Bond film. There is one or two bad scenes with CGI. That's it.
Time. 1 minute. Go.
Funny you mentioned about Joel Cohen because that's how Bill Murray got involved in these movies. Anyway, I don't understand why you put the sequel when the first movie was dire, absolutely dire. With Die Another Day, you had all of these Bronson movies, you had so much hype for them, and then you come out with this to have the celebration of the 20th. You have the annoying Madonna song, which is just you have Emma introducing the Vanquish. The Vanquish! I think that's one of the worst cars you have ever introduced by just making it vanish. Ooh, well on you. Also, the whole plot with it is just ridiculous. Why does the North Korean guy have diamonds in his face and doesn't bother to take them out? What the hell is with Rosamund Pike? What the hell is with Halle Berry just having all of this sexual innuendo stuff? What the hell is going on? And just having all of these references just because, oh, it's the 20th Bond movie. You just have all of this, and you have like Halle Berry coming out like Ursula Andress from Doctor No, really?
And time. 30 seconds, Tate. Go.
Look, it's not the worst Bond sequel, so it can't be the worst film, like movie sequel of all time. It just can't. With Garfield, you have a shit film, and then you have the way shittier sequel afterwards, where they double up the characters just to make you feel even worse. Die Another Day is enjoyable in parts. I like the two Bond girls they introduce, and I like the villain. It feels fun. It's a fun film to watch. You can stick it on and just let your brain disappear.
30 seconds, go.
With movies, you don't want your brain to disappear. I mean, you've got terrible CGI when it comes to Bond and his action things because they're not really action. It's just watching dummies will fail around all the time. And with Garfield, at least they had tried something new. With this, it's basically just, oh, we're doing this because the other Bond movies did it. We're doing this because you recognize this, right? Garfield, you kind of knew what you were expecting, but at least it tried something new. It tried, actually had some
time.
effort.
Sorry, just from that rebuttal, I thought you were describing Skyfall.
You pipe down, son.
Take some of the Dark Knight Rises heat off me, Tate, please. I don't know where I stand on this fight, and I kind of think that I have to because we only have a brief few minutes of Naomi left before she needs to take off. Does anyone want to go first? Does anyone have a verdict?
Someone please go first.
I'll go then. I think Tate wins this one for me. I think I can't remember what the specific line in your rebuttal was, but when you just absolutely tore Garfield to pieces, like you just ripped it a new one. I just think I think you just were able. I think the balance of your argument was much better in the way you were able to sort of attack your film and sort of defend Die Another Day. I did think there were some really good points made about where Die Another Day maybe falls down, but I think Tate just overall argued his point a little bit better. So yeah.
George, do you have a?
I'm heartbroken that it is on this list, all bias aside. There wasn't enough of an attack on Garfield, so I don't think I can give it. There was a lot of an attack on Die Another Day, which breaks my heart. But I just think Tate's. It was the fact it was the shitty beginning film followed on by the shitty sequel. Although I do like the fact Naomi said, it was all the hype on the 20th Bond film. But I'm gonna send through takes. I thought it was just a stronger argument overall.
Sorry, Naomi. I would have also have sent Tate through. As Ryan said, that the venom and charge towards Garfield was strong, and I felt it despite never seeing either of them. I will say though, like you could have like used the Bill Murray argument because you know what, Bill Murray's still in your movie, and Bill Murray's great. So, and also no Zombieland reference that really did.
True. Yeah, I was expecting. I only recognize it now.
But yeah, I would have given it to Tate. So
I'm out anyway. So.
So we have to say goodbye to Naomi now. This has actually never happened on Battle of the Brackets before, so we're kind of having to like make up.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. You've got places to be tomorrow. Absolutely no worries. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for fighting. It's great to have you back on, and hopefully we can get you on for the next one. We don't even know what the next bracket's going to be, but it should be sometime next month.
Yeah,
thanks
do let me know what's going on, and thank you guys again for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure.
No worries. Enjoy your graduation tomorrow, by the way.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
So, what do we do now? What happens?
Brinsley steps in, and Brinsley has become the judge.
There we go.
For the evening.
Is that on the comments, Brinsley?
Brinsley's on the comments. So what I'm saying is, you can comments the reasons why.
Yes.
I mean, not in a horrible way, but it's kind of a blessing that we don't have any of Naomi's picks, because honestly, I hadn't seen any of her movies. So
I would have destroyed Die Another Day. It should not be on this list.
I've seen Die Another Day. Wait, which ones are her picks? Her picks.
All four of hers are out.
You've seen Attack of the Clones, Chris.
This is true. Oh, that's actually that's true. But it was out, wasn't it? So
we have one more round of the opening round, which is Chris and Indiana Jones 5 versus Cars 2.
I thought we were going back to Matrix for a second there. Okay.
No, we've got to go back one. So Brinsley's judging. So what's going to happen if he's listening? Brinsley, comment the winner and like 2 lines. I don't want you to type an essay. And then what we'll do?
No, we want a dissertation, like sources, everything.
we'll have Ryan. We'll have Ryan and Tate, or basically we'll have whoever's on the live stream. The 2 on the live stream, they will be doing the votes first, and then Brinsley.
Yeah.
Which gives them time to type, and obviously naturally the stream is a couple of seconds behind. So if you're listening, just judge the arguments. You don't have to watch the films. Trust me, half of us don't. You just listen to the argument and who made the best argument. That is all. It's easy.
And don't forget the Harvard referencing. Right.
Harvard.
Chris,
what are you talking about?
Indiana Jones 5.
4.
That's what I keep calling. It's because I've cleared Indy 4 out of my life, so all I can think of is Indy 5.
The bracket I got sent also lists it as Amazing Spider-Man 4, and I was really confused. I didn't even know there was a third.
Okay, are you boys ready?
Chris, you're up.
I'm ready, yes.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
This is probably the most heartbreaking sequel for me, personally, on a deep emotional level out of any of the picks on this list for me. 2008, we got a new Indiana Jones movie, and I think it was 1989 that we had Last Crusade. This is a movie that no one wanted to make. There's a great interview out there with Steven Spielberg, the man himself, saying quite outright, like, he didn't want to do another Indiana Jones movie. The story was ended, like, you had the perfect ending shot of riding into the sunset. Nevertheless, you know, we get some of the same cast back. We get Harrison Ford back. We get Marion back, and I can't remember the name of her, the actress on that, unfortunately. And what we got was just an absolute travesty. It's completely visually different. There's way too much CGI in the movie. There's completely ridiculous things in the movie, such as aliens. Like, you couldn't just think of another artifact. You had to resort to aliens. There's UFOs. There's swinging monkeys, nuclear fridges, and CGI prairie dogs from the first opening scene. Like, you know you're getting in for an awful movie when you have those great,
Your film has foundations, and you're right, it's heartbreaking. I've never fully sat through it, which I guess helps your argument. But the whole world has forgotten Indiana Jones 4, as in they tried to forget. It's not everywhere. Lucasfilm haven't re-released the Blu-rays as a trilogy. That was Lucas's edition. Lucasfilm are only making Indy 5, so Indy 4 doesn't exist. Cars 2. They have to slap Lightning McQueen's face on everything. Pixar don't want you to forget Cars 2 happened, but Lucasfilm want you to forget Indiana Jones happened. While you're living through a nightmare, all you have got to do is think of the past. Let's just keep living it. Michael Caine as a spy, as a car. How easy is that? You take the dysfunctional, stupid character of Mater and make him the main character. Indiana Jones gives the hat to Shia LaBeouf at the end of the film. That's right at the end. The torch passes at the beginning scenes. This is given to the stupid tow truck. They actually changed protagonist at the start of the film, which immediately sets you off in a bad ride. And you know what, Indy 5?
And
Indy 4, sorry.
I feel like you kind of helped my argument there a little bit, because you said that Indiana Jones 5 is going to, I hate to say this again, reboot the reboot. They want you to forget this movie. The same director is coming back to essentially make an apology piece for the movie that he made. Cars is a franchise that, as Pixar, is marketed exclusively towards kids, and that's fine. It spawned a trilogy. Merchandise is everywhere. Kids love Mater, so if you are a kid watching Cars, there's something to like there. The fun, wacky characters. Indiana Jones 4 completely tarnishes the trilogy.
And go.
Cars 2. Kids like it. No one wanted Cars 2. We wanted Bugs Life 2. We wanted other 2s from Pixar, but we got Cars 2. No one wanted Cars 2. The first wasn't that much of a hit compared to... It was just made because it was easy to make. And then they made Cars 3 and kept the continuity up. At least you're going to forget about your film. If you're living through the limelight, that's far worse because it's repetitively in view. Your film is a bad film. This is awful. And by Pixar standards, you take one of the finest companies in the world and you drop it on. At the point of Indiana Jones 4, George Lucas's reputation has already gone downhill. Pixar's was still uphill at this. This is off the back.
I have never forgotten, and I will never forget Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. For me, the pain is still too real.
Okay, I'm gonna go first on this one. I feel like, George, you were shooting yourself in the foot with a lot of that argument. The fact that Pixar are very happy to push this forward shows that they have faith in it, and the fact that they were happy to show it. The fact that King of the Crystal Skull is so bad, they're actually making another film to cover up what the previous film was, and Cars 3 was a continuation of the continuity. You kind of wrote yourself out of that argument, so I'm giving it to King of the Crystal Skull and Chris.
This is awkward then, because I'm actually giving this one to George, because the amazing point about throwing away a protagonist in the second film and just throwing it to it's like if Attack of the Clones' protagonist was Jar Jar. That's almost how it was likened to. And
yeah.
And it was the really good point you made as well about, by this point, George Lucas's reputation's already scarred because of his influence on the prequel trilogy, whereas Pixar's reputation is like the global leader in like kids films and animation, and then this piece of garbage comes out. I think that point was what really swung it for me, but it was a really, really, really close argument.
And now we wait. So in the meantime, I can fill the gap, because I believe at the point of, so I've got a story which Chris knows, I don't think Tate does. I was in Belgium in 2015, August 2015, for the F1, and at our hotel, obviously Chris wasn't here, but he knows this story because I think I texted him. There were 3 English channels: BBC One, BBC Two, ITV. No, one, just BBC One. And for 2 days solid, all I saw were casualty arguments, not arguments, casualty adverts for this anniversary. And then, anyway, I remember getting back after qualifying. So the Saturday night, I'm just watching BBC. This casualty advert comes on again, and then it stops. And the Lucasfilm logo came up, and I literally almost cried. I was like, no way. It's like an English film. It's like, it's Indiana Jones. And it was all bigging up. And then it zooms into the, is it like the desert it starts off in?
Yeah.
And then
Prairie Dog Mound.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh no, this is Indiana Jones 5, isn't it? And then I saw the opening scene.
It's not 5, George.
I can't.
That's possibly my favorite thing about this, is that it's so bad no one even knows which film it is.
It's just because you think of Indiana Jones trilogy, or you think of Indiana Jones 5, the new one. Basically, so we went out for food. I made everyone go out, so I didn't have to put up this monstrosity. And they came back, and it was actually in the last 10 minutes of the film, and I had to sit through. So I've seen the first 10 minutes, and I've seen the last 10 minutes. That's all I've ever seen, because I've tried watching it before and I can't.
Did you see the nuking the fridge scene?
Yes, I've seen that scene, which Spielberg actually takes responsibility for, not Lucas, which is fair play. He didn't have to admit that. But I saw the end scene where there's like a skull, and then it goes into like 100 other skulls, and then the UFO flies off, and then they're getting married, and then Sheila Booth.
Honestly, you would think that wouldn't make sense if you hadn't seen the middle of the film, but I've seen the middle of the film, and that ending still doesn't make sense. It's just woeful. I saw it at the cinema because I was a kid. I was like really hyped. I loved indie, and I was like watching it, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" Like, it's awful. But then,
no joke. I felt like one of my family members had died after watching indie. That's always what I liken it to. Seriously, it hit me.
Here we go. We have the deciding vote here. Brinsley has messaged saying Chris's argument starts off strong, even if it was a bit too personal on how it just let him down. But he did have strong battles. I think I'm picking Chris, even though I did like George's points. So Chris has been chosen.
Chris, I mean, let's be honest. You know, Indiana Jones. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
And if you look at the screen, you will see halfway through the bracket, we have a matchup for round 2. We have The Matrix Revolution versus Terminator Genisys. You have Amazing Spider-Man 2 versus Big Mama's House 2. Quantum of Solace versus somehow The Dark Knight Rises, Indiana Jones 4, and Garfield 2. And that's round 2. It's already getting very interesting. I like the fact there's blockbusters and like just 2 random singular films.
It's just like the craziest matchups, isn't it? Like, apart from, as you said, like the first one, 2 sci-fi sequels.
I'm usually the one not to pick. I'm usually the one to pick the indie picks and everything like that when we're choosing films. But this time around, I seem to have picked the absolute scraping the barrel picks as far as films are concerned. My arguments.
So first up is Terminator.
Dun, 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 dun.
Sorry. Matrix Revolutions.
Matrix Revolutions
versus Terminator Genisys.
So am I up first?
You are up first, Christopher. Sorry, I'm just editing the bracket ever so slightly.
Okay.
Are we
Chris,
ready?
You're up first. I am ready. If you are ready.
I am ready, yes.
3, 2, 1, go.
I'm going to begin with an attack on Genisys first and then cycle back to Revolutions. So I think the impact of Genisys is lessened slightly because you had Terminator 3, which everyone hated. You had Salvation, which everyone hated. This is just kind of another one of those. So I think the overall impact of the pain of Terminator Genisys was lessened somewhat. I think The Matrix is definitely more akin to being the worst sequel because this was Reloaded and Revolutions were filmed back to back, and this was going to be your epic conclusion to the trilogy where it was going to round everything off, tie everything off. And the point is, it's an absolute slog of a movie to get through. It's terrible writing. It's actually cringeworthy performances. Hugo Weaving is one of the most prolific actors in the business today, has a scene where he laughs like a mad scientist. It just feels so out of place in a Matrix film. It feels like you're watching like this really bad B movie for a second. The action is also incredibly underwhelming. The first Matrix film was a movie that just propelled action in a new direction. We hadn't seen anything like that before. When you get to the final movie, you're expecting at least a shred of that, but there really isn't much action in the movie.
And go.
The problem with the Matrix is it's in the trilogy. It is attached to that trilogy, and because there's no other way of doing it, no one really cares. They're going to try and reboot it, but no one really cares about a Matrix reboot because that first one is so important. Which gets my one. You know, Matrix 1's great. Matrix 2 is already going downhill, so 3 is like, okay, it's just ending for the sake of it. Terminator Genisys was right. We've had these awful films. Now we're going to bring Arnie back. We're going to get this franchise back on track. We're going to bring Emilia Clarke, who is currently on a hot streak, i.e. acting-wise with Game of Thrones, Emmy nominations and whatnot. We've got Matt Smith involved, who's just fresh off Doctor Who run Before the Crown. They've got this cast put together, and Jai Courtney, a so-called young up-and-coming actor. And you're kind of not half excited, but it's only when James Cameron says this is Terminator 3 that you think, right, they're backing this, they're behind it. Marketing was everywhere, and it was just the worst film ever made in history. It was shocking because of how much attention been put to it. Bringing Arnie back to do his worst film, worse after worse after worse, it gets worse. Whereas
and stop, 30-second rebuttal, go.
Execution may have been bad in Genisys, but there are still a lot of different ideas that were brought to that sequel, more so than the previous couple of sequels. Terminator 3 was a direct remake of Terminator 2. This one brought Arnie back in a different way, where he was a father figure to Sarah Connor. These were things that we hadn't seen in the Terminator franchise before. The fact of like course correcting and like going into that first movie at the beginning and changing the timeline in some way was different. It wasn't an absolute retread, so there was at least something new there. With Revolutions, it completely mired the story and pointless philosophy, vapid dialogue, uninteresting.
And go.
Terminator betrayed the entire franchise when it made John Connor the villain. That's the entire franchise dead because you've made the sole protagonist the villain for no reason. How do you make that any worse than what it is? You put it in the trailer. Your trailer already knows what's coming, and it's just absolute rubbish. And the fact, I don't want to keep saying reboot the reboot, but it's already done and it's forgotten with. I don't care. There's a new Terminator film coming out, and this film staying means you don't want another Terminator film. People want more Matrix films. No one wants no more Terminator films. The Matrix reboot, there's potential. There's nothing for Terminator. Everyone's done.
Just want to point out, like I put in our chat here, which you guys can't see, but no one ever talks about the fact that there was a fourth Matrix.
Was that the animate? Yeah, but that was like the animated spin-off.
That was direct to video, though. That doesn't.
But that's like comparing like the animated Clone Wars film of 2008.
Yeah,
it does tie up a lot of loose ends.
But you also shouldn't have to watch that in order to enjoy Revolutions.
I enjoyed Revolutions.
Tate, do you want to go first? Or?
Yeah, I will go first. Both quite strong arguments, and like the passion from each argument was quite strong on the hatred for each other's, but also the kind of appeasement, which I know you both probably hate each film's either side. So the appeasement really is what it comes down to, and what I think one person kind of chose to enjoy from the other film more. If this is making any sense, if this is not, just then tell me straight away.
I'm kind of on you.
Basically,
yeah.
This argument doesn't come down to which side hates their own film the most. It comes down to which side likes the other film more. And I've got to give this to Genisys. Like, I have to. I just have to.
So you're so you're putting Genisys through. You're not saying that he likes Genisys more. Okay,
Genisys through.
I was a bit lost then.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan.
I mean, it was a phenomenal. yeah, the argument was so close. But George, you won me over with your point about making John Connor the antagonist and putting it right in the trailer. It really like summed up the awful quality of that film. Like, I think that was the one point that stood out for me because both of you were arguing it so well. It was crazy. I didn't really know which way I was going until that point. So for that just alone, I think I have to give that one to George. So
we all forget as well that Matt Smith was the face of Skynet.
Oh, it's brilliant. So Matt Smith got announced yesterday for London Filming Comic Con. And in his giant picture, obviously it's the Doctor. Then it's him as Prince Philip. And it's like, he was also in Terminator Genisys. Was he in like one scene and he like grabbed him in a flashback?
Yeah, it's at the beginning and then he like came back at the end as like a weird CGI thing. I can't even remember that movie.
They were going to do like 3 films, weren't they? All back to back. And yeah, just nonsense.
We have a comment from Brinsley. He's put, George wins this one for me, even though Chris had some good points. George came back stronger, especially how James Cameron endorsed it, and he made the point they turned John Connor into a villain. Yeah, that's fair enough. Also, like as I said, like Matrix was my, like, not to make an excuse, was my one that I just grabbed. I haven't seen Revolution since 2003. I watched it once on VHS, and that was it. I was done.
I think I think people are still stuck up with the hatred of that film because I still find areas of the film which are confusing for sure, and some parts which makes me question it completely. But I still enjoy it to a point where I can sit down and watch it. I think some films in the past, they're looked upon negatively, and if they don't have a strong enough fan base behind them to kind of pick up from where it left off, like the Star Wars franchise, where the prequels are starting to be looked upon in a more positive light because of memes and because of people rewatching them.
And because of Force Awakens and Last Jedi.
For the love of God, Matrix Reloaded has a better fight scene than it does in the first Matrix film, I think, with the lobby sequence in the second film. And I think the third film should be rewatched and rejudged.
Burn them all.
Down from a shitty film to maybe an okay film.
There's only one film Keanu Reeves is in, that's John Wick.
Yes, now that could be a great trilogy.
It will be a great trilogy.
No, I'm still waiting on the Raid 3, guys. That
will be after his next film. Guarantee that'll be one of the most lit films in history. Right, are we ready for the round of next?
Hold on, Brinsley, you cannot get away with an off the record here. Off the record, I enjoyed Terminator 3 and Genisys. Actively goes back and ruins the previous films. Can't wait for John Wick 3.
There we go, and Burn and Ted 3.
Off the record, I actually don't mind Terminator 3 and Salvation.
I quite like it. Yeah.
Off the record, I only remember watching Terminator Salvation because Christian Bale was Batman.
Yeah. And he's probably the weakest thing in that movie. But anyway.
They're all dead!
But it did give us his rant on YouTube.
Yes.
Oh, that's one of my favourite videos of all time.
I was a punk.
You want me to crash your fucking lights? It's like deleted audio from American Psycho.
For you. Right.
Get
this back on track.
Next one.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 versus Big Mama's House 2.
Right, okay. So Amazing Spider-Man 2 up first. 1 minute on the clock and go.
So with Big Mama's House 2, you know exactly what you're going to get. You know, okay, it's going to be exactly like the first one. It's going to be this comedy. It's going to be like this. He's going to be playing a big black woman, and that's that. And it's just what it is. You expect this. Comedy sequels are famous for being worse. Very rarely do you get a better comedy sequel than an original. So it's natural to presume that it's going to get worse and it's going to go downhill. Amazing Spider-Man, there was potential there. There was this good thing going with Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy. Give them credit for that. And this is pre-Avengers. That came out pre-Avengers. Amazing Spider-Man has been filmed. And then what happened for the second one? It was just, oh my God, they're making so much money doing these spin-off films. We've got to launch 6 of our own spin-off films. So they forgot about their actual upcoming film and just decided to use it as a terrible trailer for the future ones. You know, the adverts had 3 villains, Rhino, Green Goblin, and Electro. The Rhino's in the opening scene and the final shots. The final shot is the trailer shot from the entire film. So you think it's actually going to carry on, but then it doesn't, and it actually somehow makes you end up more annoyed. I mean, you're happy the film's over because it's rubbish, but then you're also a bit pissed off that.
1 minute take, go.
The basic kind of area from these films with Amazing Spider-Man 2, it's pitched as an action film. It's pitched as a superhero film. It has superheroes in it. It delivers on some areas of the action, maybe not to the extent that people wanted it to. Mine is pitched as a comedy film, and it doesn't deliver on any comedy even slightly. In fact, it tries to steal jokes from the first film that people didn't laugh at, which makes it repeating jokes that no one laughed at in the first place. It's almost like the first film made money and it was a complete cash grab for the next film. With your film, it had potential, it didn't deliver on it. My film didn't really have much potential to go from, and it's still way worse than the previous one, just because, like, it didn't have anything going for it in the first place doesn't make it any worse of a shit sequel, because it is the shittest sequel to a film of all time, and the first film wasn't that good. How does that even compare to a film which did have
30 seconds, George.
You just described my film. The average first film with a worse second film while trying to set up 10 more films. It was dreadful. You literally just described mine. And Spider-Man, the most iconic superhero of all time. Who does he save? Gwen Stacy's neck just goes on the floor. There's no moments of him saving people. Go back to Tobey Maguire. He's saving people. Tom Holland, he saves people. He just sits there in Times Square just electrocuting the shit out of everyone. He doesn't even do his own job. He's boring. And it's more of like, oh yeah, Spider-Man's a hipster. He's cool. It betrays the character of Spider-Man. Everyone knows what you get with us. Mine was something that could have been and was just, oh, this is so bad.
30 seconds, take, go.
It could have been, but your film is still watchable. I can barely look at the cover of this film because it lies to you immediately. Your film showed off one of the most famous comic book moments in history with the death of Gwen Stacy, and it delivered on it really well. That was an emotional scene. This film has no emotions that it exudes. You sit there lying bored out of your goddamn ass, hoping that you could burn the CD. In fact, I'm tempted to if it wins. If it wins this Battle of the Brackets, which I highly doubt it at this stage, but I will burn this CD on camera.
Time.
That's how bad it is.
That was a really tough fight.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
For me, on the one hand, it's the debate of which is worse, a film that has loads of potential but doesn't meet it, or a film that has no potential at all. That's what it really comes down to, which you think is worse. I think I've got to give it to Tate, because to me, his hatred for the movie just came through more. The fact that it does kind of retread everything from the first one, and the fact that he did say that there is at least some shred of like emotion to it with the Gwen Stacy stuff. Like, I agree, because I could see George's face. I agree that it wasn't executed as it should have been. But the point is it was executed in at least some fashion, which is more than you get with Big Mama's House 2. It's a difficult argument. Like, I know we're arguing for worst sequels, but there are like two ways you can look at sequels and which one has the worst impact. But I'm going to give it to Tate on this one, just slightly.
See, I think I've fallen on the complete opposite side. Your point is absolutely valid. It's what's worse, a sequel that doesn't live up to its potential or a sequel that had no potential to begin with. But I think George just argued it's slightly better for me. The way he talked about the protagonists in the other films in the franchise, well, not in the franchise, but of the same character with the original Spider-Man and the Spider-Man Homecoming, and he talks about how like this Peter Parker was an affront to everything that Peter Parker should be. I think that point won me over, but again, that could have gone either way for me. So
we have another tiebreaker. So we are currently waiting on Brinsley. Hopefully he's still tuned into us, because this will be very awkward if he's had to like.
I have to say, it's always hard arguing against a film that has a fan base when I'm pretty sure Big Mama's House doesn't actually have a fan base.
Did you say they made a Big Mama's House 3?
They did, I believe.
But they didn't make an Amazing Spider-Man 3.
Well, George, you have won it anyway. I have to go with George. He made a great point about the Spider-Man having more potential, and you kind of know what you're going to get when going into Big Mama's House. It's true.
That's true.
So
I didn't actually think I was going to get through then. So
rest in peace. Rest in peace. Burning this CD on stream. That would
save it for a rainy day. Just
just you Tate knows he loves it inside.
I really fucking hate that film. In fact, if anyone really does. If people watching this stream right now, if you want to claim this copy, I'd happily send it to you.
We'll do a free giveaway.
A free giveaway of Big Mama's House 2.
Tate, can I just ask before we move on to the next round, who actually bought that movie? Was it you? Was it a parent? Was it a sibling?
It was parents for when we were kids, and it was played once. It's in pristine condition. I remember actually hating it as a kid. That's how much I hated it, and it's kind of lived on a CD shelf for ages. One of the worst jokes in the film is Martin Lawrence wearing a fat suit and a bikini doing a Baywatch run down the beach. It is god awful.
So that sounds better than watching a man in a black hat walking through Oscorp to find just like all the trailer shots in the credit scene, and then the other credit scene being an X-Men trailer.
Do we remember some of like the deleted footage from Amazing Spider-Man 2? How
Norman Osborn's head in a box.
You were going to have
he was going to get brought back.
Peter Parker's dad was still going to be alive and like faked his own death despite being in a plane crash at the beginning of the movie. How they wanted to do an Aunt May like spy espionage movie.
Oh my God.
Brinsley also like punctuated at the end. Tate's main points was that it wasn't funny and boring, but isn't that kind of subjective?
Isn't this all subjective?
No,
no, Tate, the Wachowskis are getting to you. Back away, back away.
Up next, oh God.
Oh, is it
Quantum of Solace? Quantum of Solace versus Dark Knight
Fucking
Rises.
Bring it.
Okay, are you ready, Quantum of Solace? Okay, 3.
I thought you were putting war paint on there for a second.
3, 2, 1, go.
Right, let's just get it over the open. Both these films have fantastic predecessors. No more arguments on that. And then it's what follows after. Yours continues to be great, whilst mine gets shit. It gets shit and shit and shit. You have an opening seizure of the car chase, Mr. White being delivered, and then suddenly there's a building and there's CGI and there's glass everywhere, and it's all absolute nonsense. The entire film from start to end. The fact this entire film is called Quantum of Solace because they couldn't get the rights to Spectre for 6 more years goes to show they didn't even have the time to think about their own sequel. They just wanted it done and out there because it was nothing more than a cash way to get it out of the system. Dark Knight Rises, it's the finale. I mean, Nolan could have said no, and they could have continued, and they could have given Christian Bale that $50 million to carry on doing for Justice League and whatnot. But they said no, we're going to end it on this trilogy. There's a firm ending in sight. Mine is all about that. I mean, let's rinse Casino Royale. Let's rinse the James Bond franchise. Yours is a great film, and it's an ending. You don't get ending in superhero films. Yours did it in the only way it could. It's a very hard corner to get around with it being essentially Batman retiring.
And stop. And go.
Both of these movies have a narrative opening problem. You probably come down on your movie because it's the first Bond movie to pick up right where the other one left off. I have a problem with Dark Knight Rises for being set 8 years into the future. There's really no reason that Dark Knight Rises needed to be set 8 years in the future. The only reason that decision was made because Nolan wanted to be selfish and keep his a self-contained trilogy. Really, you could have made Dark Knight Rises follow straight on from how Dark Knight ended. Your movie, at least there's some rhyme and reason why it continues. Like, he would have been revenge-filled. Like, that's the kind of new Bond that Daniel Craig puts across. So that opening scene, everyone talks about that from Quantum of Solace. It might be the only good scene from that movie, but it is a scene that everyone talks about, and there is a story reason for it. With Batman, and let's get to the end of Dark Knight Rises, then the big one. So Batman fakes his own death. That right there betrays the entire antithesis of the character of Batman and the promise that Bruce Wayne made to his parents. He would never give up. The point that he makes to that vow is that he will always be this guardian of Gotham. And then he just shacks up with Selina Kyle at the end, a relationship that has no substance, that isn't built up well. It's not even like the Rachel thing. Like,
and go.
The comic book Batman makes that promise, not Nolan's Batman. And also, the 8-year gap, but they're taking inspiration from the most famous Batman graphic novel, Dark Knight Returns, set many years in the future, because that was a definitive ending in comic-wise. Nolan wanted a definitive ending to his trilogy. You get my film, it's just absolute rubbish. Your film has some great scenes. You said my opening scene. Your opening is beautiful. The IMAX cameras, the introduction of Bane, the stunts in Scotland. Mine's just cheap CGI and just 100 camera cuts. Yours is IMAX, everything, just loads of the film shot on IMAX. Yours does new things with cinema. It's just stunts you can't do. They blow the full stadium.
And go.
The reason I think that Dark Knight Rises is worse is because it betrays not just Batman, but loads of other characters in the movie as well. Talia al Ghul is completely sidelined. Selina Kyle is given this romance plot, which really doesn't amount to anything. You've got a bunch of side characters pointless. Scarecrow is given a completely pointless throwaway cameo in the movie and is nothing like the character of Scarecrow. It seems like Nolan forgot the antithesis of what all the characters are striving towards, what had been set up previously, and the fact that it is a real whimper of an ending when looking at Batman Begins.
And stop.
Wow.
Two very different things, because one's the ending and the other's like not the ending.
Yeah.
In other news, you broke my heart again, Christopher. About another 10 minutes.
This is kind of like, I feel like this is the support act to what will eventually get to like another Lord of the Rings and Star Wars clash. Like, I can feel that coming on. It's like
Mission Impossible 2 versus Dark Knight Rises. If anyone's seen Mission Impossible 2,
one of those is a good movie.
It's in Mission Impossible 2. It's not even. There's not even an impossible mission to be done. It's just an action film with guns. There's actual white doves flying away.
So I actually watched it again the other day. The amount of slow-mo in that. I remember there being a lot of slow-mo. It is a John Woo movie, but Jesus Christ, take a shot every time there's slow-mo in that movie. You'll die of alcohol poisoning within the first 10 minutes. It's amazing. I love that film. And it ends on a Metallica song as well.
Okay, so...
Are you ready to go, or do you want me to go?
Brinsley's just put crickets.
Yeah.
Oh... Yeah, Brinsley, do you want to take this one first?
I mean, I can go if you want more time.
Yeah, go for it.
Again, like that was another like you guys must have so many insanely close arguments, but again, it all comes down to I think you accidentally shot yourself in the foot a little bit, Chris, when you said that about it being 8 years in the future and it being like a selfish decision, whereas George's rebuttal on that about it actually being an influence from The Dark Knight Returns, one of the biggest graphic novels. I think that point really backed his argument, and I am on your side. I really don't like The Dark Knight Rises, but I think George's argument was just a bit more concise, and that point was able to win this one over for me.
We'll say, though, side point, not bringing it into the argument. Bruce Wayne disappears for 8 years. Batman also disappears for 8 years. Batman dies. Bruce Wayne also dies.
And Robin's name was Robin.
I was going to bring that up. I didn't want to.
No, that's just a little nod. That's just a little.
Christ, that was abusive.
It hurt me. It physically hurt me.
I wanted to torch the fucking screen after that bit in the movie. But it was at the end, so I was like, in for a penny, in for a pound at this point.
Oh, this is just... I'm finding it really difficult to decide here, because the arguments were so even.
Come on, Brinsley, one boy, type.
He was on fire
unfortunately, we don't get like the whole Facebook thing like Brinsley is typing. My vote is with George. He brought up good points at the craft put into The Dark Knight Rises and the beautiful shots, and also how rushed Quantum of Solace really was.
Oh yeah, that was a good point as well. The one George made about when you contrast the openings of the two films, and I actually think The Dark Knight Rises does have a cinematically really good opening and a good like villain introduction. It just sort of falls flat for me there on after.
I'm completely against piracy, but I remember illegally getting copies of the prologue when it first came out.
And no one could understand a single fucking line of dialogue in that scene. And they had
they redid it. They didn't. I think that was the point. It was to like test audience almost.
I'll be honest here. I wouldn't have been able to decide between those two arguments. That was a really, really close one. Your points kind of counteracted each other. So
can I show you all something? Can I show you something?
Is it The Dark Knight Rises?
It's me and Christopher Nolan.
He's smiling down upon you now, boy.
That was like the first ever famous person I met, and it peaked.
There was also a second picture taken, wasn't there, George, with you on your knees in the same pose? Like...
There's a second picture. He's 3 people away, and I'm so shocked that he is 3 people away that I could take a selfie from there. And it's like a really wide angle selfie. I was just so happy that I was in his sight.
Brinsley has put, was Bane's voice really that bad in the prologue?
Bane's voice was quality.
Yes. Also, we didn't mention that Littlefinger's in the opening scene. Like, that makes it slightly more watchable, right? I guess.
It's his American. I remember saying, I was like, wait, is that Littlefinger from Game of Thrones?
See, I hadn't actually started watching Game of Thrones at that point, so for me, he was not familiar at all, and I didn't know he was in it until way after.
Fucking Mendelsohn, who is taller than Tom Hardy in real life, and they have to shoot angles to make him look small.
Oh, I thought they just did that thing where you put your trainers on your knees and then you just do that.
It was when he touches his shoulder. It's like, do you feel in charge? Right. Oh, Indiana Jones 5 versus Indiana Jones 4 versus.
Fuck's sake.
I didn't even notice that one. That's how bad
it's become so.
This has become like the new Chiwetel Ejiofor 4, hasn't it?
No, because I've always been able to pronounce his name.
What?
No.
Isn't it?
Chiwetel
Ejiofor. No, it's chewing towel egg on the floor, right?
Moving on, we have Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, 4th in the franchise versus Garfield 2. And I guess I'm up first, right? So who's doing... Oh, George, are you doing the timer?
Oh, good shout. Give me 1 sec. Right. Chris, you are... No? Yes? Yes. Mm-hmm. Indiana Jones, you're up first. 3, 2, 1, go.
Garfield 2 is a cartoonish, childish, slapstick comedy movie. You know what shouldn't be a childish, cartoon, slapstick comedy? Indiana Jones 4, and that's exactly what it was turned into by the wonderful brainchild of George Lucas and the completely just ambivalent direction of Spielberg. Spielberg can make a great movie, and it just seemed like his heart wasn't in this, and no one's heart really felt like it was in it. Another thing that really hurts Indiana Jones 4 as well is the concept in and of itself in making an Indiana Jones movie at this point. No one wants to see an old Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones works. It's not so much the character that people are interested with Indiana Jones. It's sort of what the character stands for. Indiana Jones isn't character. He's the whip. He's the hat. He's the adventurous, like young, virile kind of character, which is completely dissipated when you make an old version of the character. It's the same thing as James Bond, really. The characters are very similar in that you don't want to see an old James Bond. You want to see everything that's come before. So you're watching this old geriatric Indiana Jones.
Stop. Take 3, 2, 1, go.
Your film actually tried. I know it's a bad film. I know that it didn't end up how it intended it to be. I know that some of the characters are bad. We can all agree here that both these films are terrible. Your film actually tried. My film is just a lazy, creative decision to make more money. Your film tried to do something different. It added in some new technology. It didn't use it right. But I want to say again, it tried. Bill Murray in this film doesn't have any of the energy that he did. The lack of that he did in the first film was met with an even more dismal lack of in the second film. It's a waste of potential for a live-action cartoon mix-up movie that could work. I mean, Garfield is popular with people who read the newspapers, so they're usually middle-aged, and they wouldn't really want to bring their kids to the film to go see Garfield.
Stop.
A Tale of Two.
Hey, Chris, 3, 2, 1, go.
Let's be honest, we see a ton of kids' films that come out similar vein to Garfield, with like the likes of Smurfs and stuff like that. Is there any like possibility that this movie could have been better when it's like based on Garfield? I think this is pretty much like a safe bet what a studio would make. With Indiana Jones, with the level of like talent behind it, you had the brainchild of like George Lucas, you had direction of Spielberg, you had Harrison Ford coming back, you had this talented cast, Cate Blanchett, Ray Winston, and this was the best they could make. It was completely slapped together. It didn't feel like a finished script.
Stop.
Oh, damn it.
3, 2, 1, go.
Take away the fandom that is Indiana Jones, and this is a film which is set way past the previous film. You could even argue that it's almost similar to a reboot where he's older with the same set of characters. Garfield is a straight continuation and continues the boring, like, menial, stupid-ass jokes that kids and parents actually walked out of the cinemas from. That's what it basically comes down to. You have people who still have faith in your franchise. This franchise is dead.
Stop.
Sorry, do we have statistics that people walked out of Garfield too?
Yes, we do. I could bring them up.
Okay.
I'm sure there's probably equal statistics on either side.
Yes. I wanted to walk out of Indiana Jones 4, and I very nearly did.
If I had paid for the ticket myself, I probably would have.
I've got like a very sort of like nerdy and like borderline depraved story about Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull opening day, which I will probably go into after the decision's been made.
I have an Indiana Jones story that I saw the original trilogy about 2 weeks before Indiana Jones 4 came out because I really wanted to watch it at the cinema. Because it you know, oh my god, it's Harrison Ford. I've never seen the originals. I've got them on DVD, but I just haven't seen them. And I did. So I saw them 3. They were dynamites. And then the trip to Indiana Jones 4 got cancelled at the cinema because it was Father's Day. My friend had to spend time with his dad. I never went. I mean, back then I was what, 11? Yeah, I was 11 then. Because it was like, was it May it come out? And basically, because obviously back then you didn't really have a lot of money. You know, you don't go to cinema. I didn't go to cinema. I didn't see it. If I hadn't been Father's Day, I'd have seen that film. I don't know. I'd have witnessed something.
Quick point: I can't currently find the news article, so you can scratch that from my argument.
Okay.
George, if you're not ready to go first, I can go first.
Someone else go first. Brinty, get typing. Yeah. I'm still making my mind up.
I'm ready to go. So I think Chris wins this one for me. Hang on, I put a note on my phone because there was something that particularly resonated with me. Yeah, it was the way you talked about the character of Indiana Jones and how everyone wants to see him in his prime, and then you made a really good point in your rebuttal about Garfield. People knew it was just going to be a kids' studio film like the Smurfs, whereas the talent behind Indiana Jones 4 and the poor effort from everyone involved is really what sells it as an awful, awful sequel. So for me, Chris is going to take the point on this one.
Thanks. Tate is now drowning his sorrows.
In, 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 Garfield in Wash, yes. I'm going to also give it to Chris. I'm going to send him through. The argument was more compelling. There's only so much. I mean, it's such a hard comparison because you've got that 30-year wait sequel, and then you've actually got. I like what Tate said about they were trying to do stuff and it gave it a go, but I think Chris's argument was just he had too much waiting for him.
Had we gone with Brinsley's first, and he got it in before, we'd have had a tiebreaker, which would have been cruel. Which would have been cool. Chris had a lot of good points, but I like Tate's main argument. At least they actually tried with Indy 4. I think that's a matter of opinion as to whether they tried, but that's by the by at this point. My very, very brief Indiana Jones 4 story. So I got back after seeing that film. I was in stunned silence. I didn't know what to think. My entire hopes and dreams had been dashed, and I questioned the original trilogy at that point. I have it on DVD. It's a box set of the trilogy and a 4th bonus disc in a box set. Very, very nice box set. I went upstairs, I got my little iPod dock, I played the Indiana Jones main theme, and I held that box to me, and I was practically just rocking backwards and forwards because I was trying to process what had just happened. And thankfully, South Park come out with an episode which was like a big catharsis China problem, probably one of the best South Park episodes out there.
He's like Guy Pearce at the start of Iron Man 3, like on top of the building, just waiting for Iron Man to turn up.
Very quickly. For the next round, for the next time Indiana Jones comes up, I'll tell you my story about Indiana Jones 4.
I love how we're getting stories in. And if we look at the map, not map, what? The Sorry, when you see a little red dot going,
George versus Chris and George versus Chris.
Right, so it's George versus myself. Okay, so I'm going to do something interesting. I could just put one film straight forward to the final, but I'm not going to. Instead, I don't know. Tate, do you want to battle?
Yeah, I'll battle. Why not? Don't give me Quantum. I like Quantum.
No. I'm fighting myself in Spider-Man versus Terminator.
Oh, okay, got it.
You can have Terminator Genisys.
Okay, a film that I haven't seen. Beautiful. Let's go for it.
Oh my god.
And we have to argue why it's worse.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay.
I mean, I'm in a winning situation here.
Okay, give me a clock. Let's go.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, maybe more than a second. Maybe.
Okay. Can I also wait very quickly? Can I point out that Garfield's actual title is "The Tale of Two Kitties," and they spell "tail" as in a tail.
Oh my god!
Maybe I should have
led with that.
Though. Yeah, you should have led with that.
If you had told me that, I would have just forfeited Indiana Jones 4 outright. Okay, right. Minute on the clock. Which one's going first again?
Genisys.
Terminator.
Genisys. Okay. And go.
The fact that this film is actually referred to as Genisys kind of proves immediately why it is so hated amongst fans. You have 2 extremely good Terminator films, some of the best action films of all time. You then have 2 slightly less subpar films which do lack a little bit, which the previous films had. You then have James Cameron coming forward and saying, look, this is the film. This is it. This is the one that we wanted. This is going to be the complete continuation from the first 2 films, which everyone really enjoyed. And it turns out to be what it is. It completely ruins the franchise. It completely destroys everything that it set up beforehand by going, but wait, we need as many twists in this as possible. Why not have John Connor, the main protagonist of the entire franchise, as the villain? Why would you even do that? Why would you even start by doing that? It has abysmal performances by Emilia Clarke, who I'm guaranteed, like, she cannot act in any way, shape, or form. In Game of Thrones, she's a walking zombie.
And time, 1 minute, go.
See, with Terminator Genisys, I mean, people were kind of already down, like, oh, we can't be asking for Terminator film. With mine, you've got, right, we've just had one of the greatest trilogies of all time is Spider-Man. And they randomly rebooted it and not giving us Spider-Man 4, like, oh, Amazing Spider-Man, oh, it wasn't that bad. It was different, but, it's a bit darker. It's a bit grittier. They're trying to do new things. They're raising questions. They haven't caught Ben's killer. There's a lot of questions for them to open in Amazing Spider-Man 2 with. You get Amazing Spider-Man 2, we're building up to Sinister 6. We want to do all of this. And then from the opening scene of him driving out the plane, you've got this really cheery music. They completely bin off all the music from the first one. They bring in the Zimmerman to do some music, and it doesn't really work. He tries to make an iconic theme. It backfires immediately. So you're like, oh, Christ, I can't mess with this Spider-Man. And then it just gets progressively worse. You've got Rhino's weird accent. The trailer shot is you want to see the fight, and it never, ever, ever happens because the little kid gets in the way. It's absolute rubbish. Whereas yours, it's going to be rubbish. No one had any hope. No one cares enough. Spider-Man, people cared enough to at least go to the cinema. People tried to go to the cinema.
And
spent so much money on marketing.
Time, 30 seconds, go.
At least your film feels like a superhero film. It feels like there could be something to be saved there. The chemistry between like Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy in that film is brilliant. The scene with the recreation of the comic book of the death of Gwen Stacy, it's passable. It's good. People can go back and watch that as a clip. It's fine. We'll ignore the rest of the film if needed. There is nothing that you can recover from Genisys. There is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not the soundtrack, not the cinematography, not the shitty action cuts they put in there, not the acting, not the writing, not the directing. Nothing.
30 seconds, go.
It's the same with this. The only relevant thing about this film is the death of Gwen Stacy, and they showed it in the trailers by having the clock bell and her dropping down loads. It's in almost every other trailer. Speaking of trailers, they had about, I think, 16 minutes of the film in marketing, compared, which was almost ridiculous for marketing. It was awful. And it just completely destroyed something. It was so desperate to try and cling on to a current trend of being lighthearted and fun like the Avengers that it lost itself in the web. It literally became a piece of filth. And let's be honest, look at the careers after. Andrew Garfield went on to get nominated, Emma Stone won an Oscar. They all did better.
That was really tough. And Tate, did you say you've never seen Genisys?
I've never seen Genisys.
Wow, I felt the pain of it. Like
maybe I argue better with films I completely haven't seen at all. Know barely anything about. I know nothing about the plot of Genisys other than what I've seen in the trailer, which is probably the entire film.
I really don't want to go first on this because I'm still making my mind up. Those were both really good arguments.
I mean, they're both shit films, though.
Yeah, I mean,
they are both incredibly shit films.
For me, I think I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm giving this one to Tate actually because there was just a lot of like the fact that you hadn't seen the film just made it even better because the fact that you haven't seen it and you were still able to argue really valid points and executed the arguments, in my opinion, quite well about why you didn't like the film. George has some amazing points about like, you know, we've just had the Spider-Man trilogy. Why are we getting like another sort of series of Spider-Man films? And there was a good point about that he said that they cared enough about the character to make this film. But for me, I just think at least, like Tate said, at least there's something redemptive in that. Whereas when you come to Terminator Genisys, there's just nothing to take away from it. I think he said like you don't remember the soundtrack, you don't remember the cinematography, you don't remember anything about it. So for me, yeah, I think Tate wins this one. Even though it's George's film.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
I kind of want to give it to Tate/George as well. Like, it was incredibly well argued. And the thing that like sold me, I was like, yeah, that's the point where he said that you can kind of watch the death of Gwen Stacy as an isolated clip. And like the relationship was good between those two actors, the two characters. And Genisys literally has nothing. And I kind of thought back and went, you know what? He's right. Like, Genisys absolutely has nothing. I did like George's other rebuttal because, like, obviously he's got the same picks. But the fact that you said that the marketing for Amazing Spider-Man 2, they showed like 20 minutes of the movie, that was absolutely overkill for that film. But I am going to give it to Tate because I thought he had a more compelling argument. So here's the question, Tate. Will you now watch Terminator Genisys, or are you just going to stay away from that movie for life?
Here we go. Right.
No, I won't.
Now, I didn't want to get the figure wrong. It was 25 minutes of The Amazing Spider-Man in their marketing.
Fucking hell.
I mean, how long is the film? 2 hours?
Yeah.
A quarter of the film was in trailers and TV spots.
So let's not forget the mid-credit scene, which was
an X-Men trailer.
No,
walking through with the
Days of Future Past clip. Yeah, it was the Vietnam sequence from Days of Future Past, which then confused everyone, thinking it was all going to be connected.
Very quickly, Brinsley, I was going to go with Tate 2 for having a great argument without even seeing the film. Lol. And he was right. There is nothing to take away from it. I've not seen it, and I have no intention to see it.
I remember just ranting about Jai Courtney for like 20 minutes, and then the irony that he was the actually only good thing about Suicide Squad. Next up, we have the big one: Quantum of Solace versus Indiana Jones 5.
Wow.
4.
Again, if you didn't correct yourself, wouldn't have even noticed.
There's another shirt idea.
Right, Quantum of Solace is up first.
Okay, are you ready?
I am.
I was born.
3, 2, 1, go.
People disrespect Indiana Jones 4 for a lot of things. One thing is that you know, they wanted to give it a go. This is an older Indiana Jones. They went for a different era. Instead of just focusing so much on Nazis like we've had in the previous films, let's go Cold War, let's go Russia, let's bring in Kate Blanchett as a Russian woman, and let's bring in that America-Russia stuff, which is actually quite an interesting angle, especially historically-wise. These films are not only built off the characters, but off the historical setting. So seeing the Cold War at its peak is actually really cool to see and fun to see. You know, the nuclear war testing each other, it's building up, and combined with the alien angle of the sort of the 50s, 60s, where people did start to so believe in aliens, Area 51 and all that jazz. There was actually some potential there that they were trying to do things. Granted, it completely backfired on them, but they were trying to do new things. They gave it a go, thought, right, we'll try this with this character and do that with that character. And okay, it didn't work. Whereas Mine is just a complete rush. This film was in production in 2006, just before Casino Royale came out. This is 1 year and 11 months. This film is in development to being filmed. Yours, people were working on script from 2004.
And go.
The differences here is the circumstances surrounding the movies. So with Quantum of Solace, they obviously hit the writer's strike, and I can't imagine that anyone working on that team of Quantum of Solace wanted to make a bad movie. Circumstances happened. They had to rush it out, obviously, because Casino Royale was a huge hit, and they wanted to bank on the James Bond while it was back in fashion. With Indiana Jones, they had X amount of years between 1989, I can't do the math really quickly, and 2008. They had a long time for this thing. They had a lot of time to plan it. And ultimately, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was the result of what we got. And also the fact with like the whole alien thing, like George Lucas pitched that because he wanted it to kind of be like an alien B movie, which is fundamentally not what Indiana Jones is. I guess that was like based on like the adventure like pulp cartoons and like the old serials and everything like that. Aliens isn't what Indiana Jones is. And Spielberg didn't want to make an alien movie. He outright said that. He'd done E.T., he'd done Close Encounters. He didn't want to make it about aliens. And then George Lucas went, oh, we'll make it about interdimensional beings then. They're exactly like aliens. And Spielberg just kind of went with it.
And rebuttal, go.
And Bond isn't James Bond, but this is what it tried to be. This film was so bad that, you know, they sat down, they looked at the mistakes, right, okay, we rushed this film and it was absolutely awful. So we're going to take our time for the next one, Skyfall. We're going to take our time, build up over 4 years, bring in established directors. We're not going to have a horrible rush job. Yours, it's just Lucas on the right. We just want to fix it, so we're just going to do that. Quantum Solace, there was no going back. Even of all the Bond statistics, there was awful. Yours has stuff. They're bringing back names. They're bringing new people like Ray Benson, Kate Blanchett. Mine, they didn't bring back any of the legends except Judi Dench, who you knew time was almost up. This was awful. The B-list villain.
Stop and go.
With James Bond, though, it's a franchise where you kind of roll with the punches. There are some great Bond movies, there are some bad movies, but you're just kind of in it because it's James Bond. If nothing else, it's a decent action movie with Daniel Craig in it. And the circumstances around it, like overbearing studio, everything like that. My movie is a movie where the very director of the entire franchise didn't want to make this film, and it's complete, like he didn't shut any of the bad ideas down like he used to do in the past. It was just kind of, it just felt pointless. It felt like his heart wasn't in it, and that shows in the final product.
Can I? Actually, no, it doesn't work. Sorry. This is nothing bad.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say that the director of Quantum Solace is now doing Christopher Robin.
Okay.
Sorry, that's what's
fair enough. Just like what's it called? Person who did Mad Max.
George Miller.
He did Penguin one.
He did Babe. He also did Babe 2.
Babe 2 is an absolutely amazing film.
It's actually way better. Well, it's not better than Babe 1, but it just takes it in a direction that's so like out there. It's actually the payoff is actually incredible. So.
Like Immortan Joe just shows up out of nowhere. And,
remember me. Wow.
The dog with wheels for hind legs, like really resonating. It's just like bloody hell.
Okay. I think Chris won this for me in his rebuttal by saying that James Bond films do tend to roll with the punches, and you can get some bad ones thrown in with some good ones, and they'll always have a chance to recover it. Whilst with Indiana Jones 4, it killed it. It really did. So yeah.
Brinsley in the comments with an absolute great comment right there.
I went from poo to poo. It's true.
Poo with H at the end. Yeah.
I think the same thing as Tate. When this one for me is when he said Bond films, you kind of roll with the punches. There's some good ones and some bad ones. Whereas, like you said, this one just nearly killed the franchise off. And there was another point he made about, I think George, it almost backfired a bit when you said that Quantum of Solace was a rush job. If anything, that kind of strengthened Chris's argument because of the time that went into this film. The fact that it was so bad by the end of it really sort of almost overrid your argument. So I think that's why Chris wins this one for me.
It's like impossible to go. Right. Is Brinsley commented yet? I'm just going to kill some time. I'll do the first shot.
No, but if we're killing time, I'll give you my one experience with Indiana Jones 4. Went to go see the film with my dad, and we both kind of walked out the cinema, and it was a very weird atmosphere. I think it possibly was the first time that I'd ever sworn in front of my dad, because I tend to not really try to keep the swearing down when I was younger in front of my family, but I did just turn to him and say, "What the fuck was that?" Because I had seen all of the other Indiana Jones films and I loved them, and I was like, "Since when did Indiana Jones have aliens?" And it was kind of one of the first times I'd actually kind of watched a film, gone out of it, and been disappointed enough to give it an immediate critique by saying, "What the fuck was that?" So that is my Indiana Jones.
Actually, the story of like an Indiana Jones sequel that I'd want to see on the big screen has kind of already been taken by one of the Indiana Jones video games, which was The Hunt for Atlantis. I think that could be a.
You're going to find Aquaman.
But yeah, then it would kind of get to like the Otto Gunga city, wouldn't it? In the end, if it was George Lucas doing it, let's be honest.
He needs to tie his franchises together. That's his ultimate plan.
Yeah,
it's been the long game.
The Bermuda Triangle or something. Do something like that, maybe. I don't know.
Nah, if we're going to do Bermuda Triangle, that sounds more like a National Treasure film.
Are we ever going to get a National Treasure 3? Like, I'm still holding out that we will.
Please, Nick Cage, come on now. We want a National Treasure 3.
Right, are we Brinsley? My vote was for George. He brought the point in before good ideas buried in there, and they really rushed out Quantum of Solace. I don't know how they made it so quick. It was dreadful.
But the final...
The final is, if you look at the screen... Oh, no, it's not up there. Hold on.
Am I still fighting for you, George? Are you going to take it back?
I mean, you can fight, because there's just no way to compete against that film.
Can I count it as a win? Can it be like England coming fourth in the World Cup?
I had that once as well. The win was not allowed, unfortunately.
No, the win will be under my name.
Which one did I win it for? Was it Michael Keaton?
I'm pretty sure
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Best MCU moment.
I'm pretty sure I've won a final other than the one that I've done before. It's just
no, you haven't. No, you haven't.
I've got at least.
You've won a round.
Yeah, I've got a round. But whatever. No, George, I'll let you argue out your pick. Go for it.
Okay. Terminator versus. I've got fine Jones again. This is the fourth time or third?
Oh, I don't even know. It might be the fifth. I don't know.
Hey, I got that joke.
Yeah.
Right. Is it longer in the final as well to argue, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes. New rules. So basically, it's exactly the same rules. We just add a little bit more time for each argument if people want it. So instead of 1 minute for the main argument, we have 1 minute 30. For the rebuttal, you have a minute rather than 30 seconds. At this point, though, because you've argued for your movie quite a lot, it's very difficult at this point. But I think the extra time's there just in case you need that extra little bit of leeway.
But you can call out your time whenever you want. So if you're done with speaking, you can ask for your time to be stopped.
Yeah, it does get to the point at this stage where it feels like you're trying to hit a word count on an essay.
Okay, are you ready, guys, for the battle of the century with Indiana Jones versus Indiana Jones 4 versus Terminator 5? Yeah, 5. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
I think sometimes, these are both dreadful sequels as such, and you got to sit back and think, what is the worst sequel in history? Indiana Jones franchise is still living. People will still look back and remember 1, 2, and 3 and say, you know what, these are still great films. It's so hard. Indiana Jones 4 did not go back and rewrite those films. This film went into the Terminator timeline and completely changed it. That when they redid the T-1000 and just had it all changed from there, you kind of like, well, they've literally just destroyed these previous 2 films. Yours does not destroy the legacy of the previous 3 Indiana Jones films. If anything, it gives them more credibility, which is a great thing. Mine dampens Terminator 1 2. It does not want to make you think. People want Indiana Jones 5 so they can go out and fix 4. That's a good thing. No one wants Terminator 3 because the damage done from Terminator Genisys was so catastrophic that there is no coming back. There is a chance to come back from Indiana Jones because you have Harrison Ford, because you still have Steven Spielberg, because you still have John Williams. With this, no one wants Arnie in another Terminator film, but he bloody is. James Cameron. I mean, sorry, it was the guy that did Game of Thrones that directed Terminator Genisys, right? Who did, I think, Thor: The Dark World. I might be wrong. I think it was him. You know, that's how no one wants him back from it. They've just gone out and got a new director. Yours is sticking loyal because they know that yours was a one-off blip. Mine was just the finishing of events. My film was so desperate to be a franchise that they penned in 3 films in a row only to make them before the rights went back to James Cameron. That's the only reason this film was put in production. It was put in production.
And go.
In all fairness, I don't think people want an Indiana Jones 5 deep down. And if 4 had been great, then yeah, bring on a 5. But because 4 was so bad, you say that, like, obviously we still have the original trilogy, and the original trilogy is still there. And they're always going to be great movies, but 4 absolutely tarnished that legacy of what was a great movie trilogy. Now you can't, if technically, like, 4 is so bad that people still technically count and look on Indiana Jones as a trilogy. They've tried to, like, wipe 4 completely out of their minds, whereas for most Terminator fans, Terminator stopped being a thing after 1991, after Terminator 2 came out. It didn't bounce back with 3. It didn't bounce back with Salvation, which was their attempt at a reboot, and then this was their reboot, which also failed. Like, it was already mined. The well of Terminator had been mined at this point. Indiana Jones 4 had so much promise. It was bringing back a beloved franchise for countless ages. It was bringing back the old fans. It was bringing in new fans, and it failed in absolutely every aspect. It didn't win over the love of the original fans because it was an awful movie, and even new kids didn't really talk about Indiana Jones all that much. It failed to hit them as well. Maybe that was to do with time period. Maybe it was just to do with the story. It felt like a muddled mess of a movie. The collaboration between George Lucas and Steven Spielberg works when, you know, Lucas can create some great ideas. He can have some great story ideas. Go back to Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. George Lucas's original idea for that movie was a haunted house movie, and Spielberg just instantly shut it down and said, "No, that won't." And
1 minute rebuttal, go.
You say Indiana Jones doesn't, you know, the fans didn't like it. Critics liked Indiana Jones 4. It's on a good Rotten Tomatoes score. It was the 2nd highest film of the year in box office terms, behind The Dark Knight. Terminator Genisys, critics despised it. It was up for Razzies. The audience didn't go, but it made a little bit of money in China, but it wasn't enough to finance more films. Indiana Jones is the thing. And you said you look back, you know, it's the trilogy. It's no different to the Star Wars. The original seems a trilogy. No one sees it as the franchise. They would always be trilogies because it was. Indiana Jones 1, 2, 3 is a trilogy. That's what they are. 4 has no impact on that. The only impact is the Blu-ray box set because they haven't released it yet by itself, and they won't release it by itself until the new film's out. Indiana Jones is living, breathing, and that will always have the reputation. The reputation was not tarnished. People still go back and watch 1, 2, 3 and absolutely adore them. People won't go back to Terminator 1 and 2. They've all given up with it because there's been so much shit in a row. And Indiana Jones has the potential to come back. Terminator didn't before this. It did have potential before this, sorry, and it doesn't now. People want Indiana Jones to fix the rights of that run. No one wants Terminator.
And go.
If we're talking about box office gross, then surely that stands testament to which franchise and which movie meant the most to people. And of course, Indiana Jones 4 make a lot of money. Everyone rushed to the cinema to see that movie because they love Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones: Kingdom of the Crystal Skull hurt everyone that went to see it. With Genisys, no one turned up for that movie because everyone knew it was going to be bad anyway. They'd got bored of Terminator at that point. It just sort of compounded from previous movies. There was so much promise and so much potential for Indiana Jones: Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That's why everyone rushed to it. Like, if it's a question about box office gross, then surely that shows that more people care about Indiana Jones. With Genisys, like, if nothing else, Terminator has regressed as a franchise. Like, gone are the thought-provoking visions of the future and fate and everything like that from the first 2. Terminator became just a dumb popcorn action flick from Terminator 3 onwards, and it's remained that way. So it's nothing but consistent. It might be a bad movie in terms of that, but it's still inherently, that's what Terminator is now. With Indiana Jones, there's a certain reverence to that trilogy. There's a certain expectation from those previous 3 movies.
That was a very good fight, guys. That was a very good fight.
Well thought.
True story. Indiana Jones 5 comes out on my birthday in 2021.
That will either be a very, very good birthday or a very, very fucking dismal one. I'm sorry.
Well, I know it begins at the cinema at midnight, potentially after meeting Harrison Ford at premiere.
I was going to say, if we can get that, then our job has been done.
Okay, so...
Call of the Wild.
I have made up my mind on this one. Both points were very strong. It was a very
before you judge. Isn't the final easier because you've got longer time? You could be more methodical with how you talk.
Yeah,
you don't have to rush every word.
Correct. Both of you guys slowed down your arguments, which made it feel a lot more kind of easy and relaxed, and it actually made it easier to break down what we could judge here. For me, the biggest point it comes down to, and there's a small pet peeve that goes into this first because it could have swayed me, but box office revenue as far as how bad a sequel is concerned and the amount of people who are rushing towards it in the first place doesn't detract from the fact that the films are both bad. I think George's argument that his film actively destroyed the past films in the franchise, instead of just destroying the memory of the films in the franchise, it actually went in and purposefully changed the events in the franchise and actively killed off the franchise from within, makes it seem like it is by far a worse film and by far a worse sequel to what was previously there. So I've got to give it to Genisys, the film which I will, please for the love of God, never see unless it's a drunk watch along.
Off the record, have they killed the franchise though? Because they're making another Terminator movie.
Well, the rights, that film was rushed because they were losing the rights. So when the rights went back to Cameron, that's why now they're doing another one. But it's just going to be the same. So, oh, this time we didn't just bring back Arnie, we brought back Linda Hamilton. And it's the guy from Deadpool doing it. So hooray.
Oh, Brinsley's in. He's in straight away with this one. And we have a winner. Both made great points, but I think George swayed more, especially how you can still enjoy the original indie trilogy by itself and how Genisys goes back and ruins the older films.
That point right there, that little thing where it actually went back, and I didn't realize that it'd done that. I just thought it was John Connor's villain.
They literally go in,
sequences.
And the T-1000 is now Asian. Nothing wrong with that, but, you know, if it would have been the other way around, there'd been an uproar in the press. They you know, it's just... They go in to recorrect the entire timeline, and it just doesn't he like come up with the shotgun? I remember the trailer shot. Do you remember, Chris?
Yeah, so they have CGI old 80s replica, and then old Arnie comes out and blasts the original away, essentially rewriting the entire history from the first Terminator movie.
Because James Cameron said it's the real
third Terminator films don't need to be touched. You could rewrite the timeline in the third film. You could rewrite the timeline in the fourth film. Or,
you know, just have a movie set in the future war. Because even Salvation technically didn't give us that. Like, that
was after, wasn't it?
No, it was set before. It was way before. Like, you wanted skulls on the ground. You wanted HKs in the air. You wanted all that stuff. And we just got, like, desert warfare. That was all we got.
Yeah. Very quickly, Ryan, where would you have...
I'd have gone the other way. I'd have given that to Chris because he made the point he made made more sense in my head that... Yeah, Indiana Jones did better at the box office because of how many people cared about this franchise. Like he said, like we've had Terminator 3, Terminator Salvation, whatever, and they were shit. So no one had any expectations for what should be in Terminator Genisys. But Indiana Jones 4, the bar was so high, and they just really dropped the ball. So for me, I don't know. I might be like clouding it a bit personally because I haven't seen Genisys either. But like, it's just like you see the trailer, you know what's going to happen. Whereas Indiana Jones 4 for me, it was such a big deal. It was a big part of my childhood, so it was just like destroyed by this film. It's just an awful, awful movie. It's just woeful. I could have directed it better at the age of 10. Like I could have done it. I could have picked it up and done a better job. It's sacrilege. It just takes what the original trilogy had and just shits on it. So I don't even know how long the film is. It's like a 2-hour flick. I don't even know how they got 2 hours out of it.
It's like if 5's good, like it'll probably like wipe that shit from the original, but you're still gonna have the smear. Like it's always gonna be there.
The thing is, before that film came out, a lot of people shit on Temple of Doom. Everyone's like, Temple of Doom sucks.
I love Temple of Doom.
Loads of people still hate it. Loads of people still hate it. But when the fourth one came out, like compared to
the prequels,
the Crystal Skull,
people that moaned about the prequels for years. Suddenly like the prequels because now they've found the other film to dislike in the sequels. Yeah,
it's just,
and it'll be the same. It'll be the same when the sequels happen. They will love the Disney sequels.
I will stand by the fact that the minecart chase from Temple of Doom is one of the best action sequences.
No, I've always rated Temple of Doom.
Temple of Doom is one of the greatest prequels.
The bridge scene where he has to cut the bridge is phenomenal. Yeah. But yeah,
I remember Kalimar.
It's terrifying. Genuinely terrifying.
I'll talk to you guys about something that happened at school about Kalimar. I can't do it live on YouTube.
Okay. So, George will bring back up the completed bracket, and he has a very smug look on his face to show that he has won.
Again.
With a little assist. With an assist from Tate, may I add, in the semi-final there.
Can I get half a point for that?
No, you're still on one win. I just think this is episode 19.
Everyone has to be aware here. we're now on the 19th bracket, 18th bracket.
And Tate won the very first one.
I won the very first one. Haven't won one since. And this was mine and George's brainchild, and he's winning all of them, and I haven't won this. Like,
it took me like 3 or 4 to win, and then it just happened. just naturally.
But anyway, well done to Terminator Genisys for winning. I want to
well
done for being the worst sequel that we decided. Congratulations.
The final in Indiana Jones should have got to the final, no questions asked. Yeah. And I'm happy that Terminator Genisys did get to the final.
Honestly, let's be honest, we could easily do like another bracket of this. Like, there's Godfather 3, there's like Alien Resurrection, there's so many, countless to remember. Even like the straight to DVD.
I'll go watch and we'll add it.
Yeah, that's what Brinsley's put. He's just put, I think you guys should all celebrate by watching Big Mama's House 2. Possibly, maybe the next drunk watch along.
Well, Alien versus Predator Requiem. I'm just looking at my shelf. I've had a massive clear out, so I don't have as many awful films as I used to.
So we'll close this off now. I want to thank everyone for joining today. So I want to thank Chris. I want to thank George. I want to thank Ryan. I want to thank Naomi, even though she had to go off midway through. I want to thank Brinsley in the comments for being such a great tiebreaker typist with his very long paragraphs, which is still going now. I can't believe he's still typing now. But anyway, thank you for watching today. Make sure to like, subscribe, and this is going to be legit the first time I say this, but click the bell icon. I know that George keeps on saying I'm
always the one that says that. It's not Tate, it's me.
Not me, okay? It's not me. Don't judge me. And yeah, if you want this DVD of Big Mama's House 2, claim it on the comments or something on there.
Send them a letter in the post. And
legit. We will send it to you. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you.